What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Good to see you guys. Welcome to a Friday show. Lost track there for a second. Day 2 of the MLB grind. Following up on a really fun opening day, in my opinion. High-scoring DFS contests. Wild performances. Multiple 2-home run performances across the league. Making sure the microphone's on there. Really fun opening day. Felt like we were on top of things. Got a little bit disappointed by the Red Sox from up at the top of the board. We're kind of going right back to the well, though. They're going to be the chalk of the day, it looks like, today. And interesting spot. We'll talk about it. But let down by them a little bit. But we had the O's as the number one value team of the day. So hopefully some of you guys got to them. Had some of those Adley home runs. Big scores from the Orioles. Tyler O'Neill, we talked about during the show. Somebody mentioned it. He had been on a streak of 5 straight opening day home runs that he's now extended to 6 straight, which is just bonkers. That was a big spot. Obviously, we did not have a ton of Mackenzie Gore. I had a few shares. I played like 25 lineups. I had a few shares of Mackenzie Gore, but not enough. A couple really strong chaser lineups, though. Was happy with how the day came together. Congrats to Dennis, XX Cubs fan, the best performing lineup that I've heard of so far from our little gang here. Dennis put one in 14th, I want to say, in the big FanDuel contest out of 60,000 some odd entries, so pretty solid there. I know it wasn't an overly profitable day for him, but that's always a good sign. He asked in the chat, what do we want to worry more about? The number of lineups that cash out of the number that you put in? Or do you want to worry about top-end performance? Did we get something that was reasonably close to winning a tournament? Was up there in the top 1% like we talk about all the time? And for me, it's always what we talk about. It's always what we want to be talking about is those top-end results. We want to know that we're putting in lineups that have the ability to achieve those results on a regular basis via our process. And what I mentioned to Dennis is, maybe the caching results on the back end of that, you want to get a little bit more liberal of a spread so that you're getting that true, just, big, long string of lineups, some finishing up near the top and some that don't come close to cashing at all. And that's just, especially in baseball, we know that that's just how this works. But yeah, that's the way I would look at that. I think that's a success in terms of that lineup. And we just got to replicate it a little bit more and work on stretching out the back end of it so that you can catch up some of the profit and it's not a big hit despite having a good lineup. So we'll get there. Real interesting day today. 8-gamer on deck tonight. Lot lower end pitching. The entire pitching slate, it's way different already. Day 2. We're getting plenty of name brands, and there are some very good options, but there are definitely some targetable spots on this slate. A couple guys making their return, a couple ancient veterans like Charlie Morton taking the hill one last year in the sun, or knowing Charlie will pitch another 10, but it's an uglier pitching slate. We've got some higher run totals to work with. Should be a really interesting one. Cujo's here. Good to see you. Dennis is in the chat. Dennis says, I extended my streak of losing money on opening day to 6 straight. Nice. But you had that good performing lineup. Hopefully some folks out there cash some tickets, though. Again, it was a pretty solid day across the board. We didn't. The other one that disappointed was the Angels, the chalk of the day. How about the Chicago White Sox, by the way? Yusei Kikuchi did not have a great day, did not have an awful day. But the White Sox ended up putting up some runs. The Marlins put a few on the board against Paul Skeens. It wasn't a dominant day for Paul Skeens yesterday. So some things that we thought would maybe come through did not to the extreme degrees. But I thought it was a pretty successful first day. But yeah, Mackenzie Gore, who saw 13 strikeouts coming. 13 Ks, no walks, and did not allow a fly ball all day. Wild performance out of Mackenzie Gore. Anyway, let's get into this one. Taking a quick look at the board. So we've got more 8-run totals, and we've got a 9 on the board between the Bo Sox and the Rangers, with the Red Sox taking the higher end of the implied total as the favored team going up against Jack Leiter there. So as stated, Red Sox back up to the top of the board. I initially put it up, and I gave them a tiny little bit of a haircut and slid the Dodgers up ahead of them, but then I decided to go back on it, just especially when I saw how popular they were going to be. I said, all right, let's just put them right back to the top. We'll give them their just desserts. And I just really like the looks of that lineup this year. I will note, and we'll discuss it, that Jack Leiter looked much improved in spring training. So, we'll take that for what it's worth. But it looks like a killer spot for the Red Sox again. But you'll note, we've got a lot more dark green. We've got a lot more 4+ totals to work with. A number of several high threes here. And not quite the dip into the low end necessarily. The Athletics, kind of an interesting spot. I kind of like that lineup. There's some decent bats. There's some good upside there. They're going up against Luis Castillo in one of the worst hitting parks in the league. But that total, a little bit light. They rate out a little bit better than that total might suggest. Good pitching matchup between the Braves and the Pods in that pitcher's park. Not really putting a ton on the board. We'll see what the Tigers can muster against Yamamoto. But the Dodgers are drawing a really strong total against Jack Flaherty, who's not projecting all that well. It's a really interesting slate. You get the Blue Jays up at the top of the board, getting the stronger side of the implied total, but both these teams back over 4 and change again on an 8.5 run total. Really interesting spot. The D-backs against Jamison Tyone, pulling a really nice total at 4.63. So we've got a lot of runs on the board. As compared to yesterday, there's way more expectation of offense. So cue up the big pitching day, of course. Multiple no-hitters. That's how this tends to work. As usual, I'm going to continue, at least for the first week or so, just to have the 24 stats up here on the board. And then I'll put this when we've got a handful of games in there, a week's worth or so. And we'll talk about what's going on this year and everything. Doing it after one day, it's like, I would constantly be scrolling over to go check what they did last year to have something to talk about. So, pitching board. Handful of people here hanging out. Andy's here. Andy says, awesome, made it. Hello. Hello to you too, pal. Good to see you. Hit the like button as we get started. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't before. This is my target time for this show, I think, for the season, is going to be in this kind of lunchtimey range. Some days it'll probably be noonish. And it'll all just depend on how my morning has gone, how quickly I've gotten stuff together, the size of the slate, so on and so forth. Only one real wrinkle to deal with today. We've got the double Max Muncy today. So I had to go in and fix that and redo a bunch of things. But didn't bog me down too much. But just so you know going forward, to figure like somewhere between 12 and 2 will be the start time for this show pretty regularly. And then we'll be hanging around in Discord. And if people don't end up liking that, or if we're not drawing enough eyeballs or whatever, maybe we switch it up and maybe we go more toward right before lock. Especially right now while basketball's still going on, though, I got to be freed up in that last 2 hours before lock. So that's how we're going to deal with it. G-Money the Don's here. Good afternoon to you too, bud. Just getting started. So again, hit the like button. I'm sure everybody here is a regular so far. But if you're checking the show out later on, if you come in later in the show and you're rewinding, rotoscouts.com is the website. I try not to plug too much. Everything's under $1 a day. Access to MLB, NBA, NHL, every main slate that's going on right now. I threw up the late night projections last night for the 2-gamer for free, just for people just to maybe draw some eyeballs. Might keep doing that here and there. But the focus, what the product is every main slate all season long. So you get all the sports, NFL when it comes back, everything's included for under $1 a day. No per sport nonsense. No surprise, your subscription fee went up. None of that. So check it out at rotoscouts.com. Also give some love to our guys over at acemind.io. I don't have AceMind stuff up on the screen. I'm going to figure out a good way to integrate it at some point this season. But that's where we run the sims for NBA, for NFL. That's where they've got a great optimizer product over there. Promo code rotoscouts, 20% off your first month over at acemind.io. Let's talk pitching. Actually, let's take a sip of coffee and not mash the space bar with our hand. There we go. Sorry about that, Jeffrey Springs. All right, so top of the board. I just mentioned that he is a little bit maybe on a, not decline, that's unfair because he was very strong last year. But there are maybe some nitpicky things that you could call out about Luis Castillo. For me, it's more just, I think that Oakland looks a little bit better than maybe that Vegas total suggests, as I was saying. but I do still think that Luis Castillo looks very strong, and I fully support him up at the top of the board here. 10-4 on FanDuel as compared to everybody else on the board is obviously a pretty high price tag to be paying for him, especially if we're thinking there could be a little bit of offense. If it's a lot around the home run with that Oakland team, but they've got some home run hitters. So if he slips, makes a mistake, it could burn him. Which is true for everybody, obviously. But at that big price tag on FanDuel, I do think that's a little bit of something to consider. But still looks great, projects out at the top of the board. 8,300 on DraftKings, totally different story as far as that price goes. He looks fantastic. That's a great value to have Luis Castillo going up against the Oakland Athletic. Excuse me. It's all right, I got to address this. Still says Oakland right here because there is in one spot on one board somewhere that I have not been able to locate in this ridiculous model that has all these different tabs of stats and everything. There's an Oakland to ATH change that I haven't been able to find that I need to make that is impacting the entire thing. So right now I'm having to change Ath to Oak on the salary tab. And I will continually, for the first few weeks of the season, probably end up referring to them as Oakland. But they are now just currently the Athletics. So that's just a weird little wrinkle. But if you're looking at stats or if you have your own files and stuff matching things up, Oakland is now abbreviated universally as ATH, not Oak. So just except for, universally except for right here on this board. I'm putting it up on the site as Ath, so there's not matching issues. And since I bring them up, you'll see it later in the show, but we'll talk about it right now. I mentioned it already. The way I'm handling this guy, this is the other Max Muncy, right? He's a 22, 23-year-old rookie. I just gave him the middle initial A for our purposes right here, Max Athletics Muncy. I'm sure at some point the sites will handle it, so there's not the duplicate, although they haven't in hockey all year long with multiple Elias Petersons who play for the same team. Actually, no, sorry, they did fix that. They added Elias Nils Peterson for the other guy. So maybe they'll do something like that and give this Max Muncy his actual middle initial. I have no idea what it is. I took that off. Just be aware when I uploaded it to the site, because I think it would cause upload issues as people bring that up to the website. Or to their optimizer of choice. So just be very aware when you upload your projections that there are two guys named just Max Muncy on this slate, and they're both in those numbers. One plays for the A's, one plays for the Dodgers. The good news is their projections and home run total even are not that far apart from one another, but they're very differently priced. The one on the Athletics, obviously, a lot cheaper. So just be aware of that as you're uploading. If you take the projections and throw them into like RG's optimizer or whatever like I do. What the hell is Ath? Yeah, that's a fun one. For those unaware, and by the way, screw that organization forever for betraying Oakland like that. Like that sucks. That sucks pretty much as much. And I talked about it last year, but pretty much as much as the Supersonics leaving Seattle all those years ago, and they're finally getting them back. Baseball's going to end up giving the Athletics back to Oakland at some point, and when whatever the Vegas team ends up being, they'll be the Vegas Gamblers or something. But it just a crime to have done that. And they weren't always, they were Philadelphia in ancient history, but they were in Oakland. That was a keystone franchise. So kind of a shame what they did, but obviously, the solution was a new ballpark in that area where they have a ton of fans and everything, but whatever. Long story short, the Athletics playing this season in a minor league park in Sacramento, which is really interesting. Going to be some interesting park factor things going on there, but that might play kind of mid as far as park factors in that case. There's a really good article up on it on Fangraphs, and it's kind of irrelevant for today because it's not a home game. They're in Seattle. Colin Sutherland says OKC forever. Not actually a fan. Look, I really like that Thunder organization. They've been great since they've been in OKC. I don't really have issues, and I don't hold the grudge because I was never a Sonics fan for one, but I'm sure they do. But it just sucked to take the Sonics away from Seattle all those years ago, in general. So I'm glad they're getting them back when the NBA expands. But what I was going to say is Fangraphs today has a pretty good article. The guy went in and analyzed the because park factor is not necessarily all about the dimensions, and he goes into this in great detail, but it's a lot about the air density And that's why, at elevation, the air thins out, course, et cetera, et cetera. And he graphs that all out in the article. So he talks about it, and the air density in the Sacramento Stadium maybe not going to really push, despite it being, a somewhat small ballpark, maybe not going to push it to extreme degrees as far as park factors. The one that's going to be wild is George Steinbrenner Field, where the Rays are going to be playing this year, and they're actually going live, I think, right now. Is it a 1 o'clock game? They're playing this afternoon. The first game, the Rockies and the Rays are playing in Tampa. It's not going to matter as much today, but when it gets really hot in Florida all season long, that's going to be an absurd ballpark. It's going to be really thin air. The ball's going to fly. They're going to have all sorts of issues with rain all season long. That ballpark, if you don't know, has the exact same dimensions as Yankee Stadium because it's the Yankees. It's George M. Steinbrenner Field. It's the Yankees minor league ballpark. So for guys like Brendan Lau, that could play up huge for some of those lefties. It's just, Colin says Rays up 4-10. All right, thanks, bud. Good, I'll be able to watch that. So yeah, I just think that ballpark's going to be nuts all season long. But Brandon Lau specifically, I think it's going to be really interesting. And then the other lefties on that team going to play up really well, and any visiting lefties, we're going to be talking about that ballpark all year. Anyway, not on this slate, so let's not get too bogged down there. 17 people here hanging out. Let's dive in. Orioles and the Blue Jays, again, coming back with one of the highest totals on the board. 2 teams over 4 implied runs. The Orioles were the strong preference yesterday. They were coming in as the top value team of the day, and it doesn't look like the prices have really moved. Everybody, the most expensive guy on the team is Tyler O'Neill on DraftKings at 46. Fair price for Tyler O'Neill. Adley at 45 after his 2 home run day yesterday. Came roaring back to life. Could be a huge season from Adley. If he's fully healthy, could be the top catcher on the board. But just cheap for this. These guys are going to be way more expensive as this year goes on. We're going to have multiple guys over the $3,500 mark into the 4s on FanDuel, into the 5s on DK. So fairly priced Orioles team for sure. And they're going up against Kevin Gausman. 31 starts last year from Gausman, a 3.83 ERA, a 4.22 xFIP, 21.4% strikeout rate. Strikeout to walk was mediocre, 21.4 to 7.4. It's not a terrible walk rate. But Kevin Gausman, not really as strong an option as the name might suggest, right? He's been a name for a number of years, but the results really haven't been there. They've been on the decline. 4.22 xFIP under that 3.83 ERA. Stuff plus, 7 points below average, 6 points below average. Same story on the other side for Charlie Morton, but at least Charlie Morton's got an excuse. He's 137 years old at this point. So Gausman, his one saving grace last year, looks like he didn't allow too many home runs. 2.65% home run rate is pretty good, but there's no real reason to point to for that. 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo is over the threshold that we're typically looking for on the average in these numbers. 41.4% hard hits, same thing. 9% barrels is kind of an aggressive rate of barrels to have allowed. So you can see with better hard hit exit velo numbers, but a similar barrel rate allowed on a lower launch angle, Charlie Morton actually allowed a higher home run rate last season. So Gausman got, and there's a lot of luck involved in those home run numbers, unless we're talking about one of these guys that's elite at inducing ground balls. And Morton's good at inducing ground balls with that 9-degree launch. But Gausman, on his 16-degree, probably got a little bit lucky to have kept this down, and that would have impacted his ERA. It would have been pushed into the 4s. It would have been even uglier. So I love this spot for the Orioles, just to fire right back up with that offense. They're looking really strong here. Colton Cowser up at the top. 13.6% barrels and 45% hard hits last season. He's a strikeout machine at 30%, but he draws his walks. He had 24 home runs, 204 ISO. One of their top bats. Excellent spot for power. He's going to get additional opportunities via the leadoff spot, especially if that offense is rolling. Hitting ahead of Adley, who again started the season on fire. Nobody drawing crazy home run marks, though. I mean, part of that is because Gausman did not give many up last year. What did he do the year before as far as the home run? Yeah, it's same. 2.49, 2.07. So he just gets away with it. Whatever it is about Gausman, he just gets away with kind of allowing a fair amount of premium contact, but not necessarily the home run ball. And it's been the same over these last 2 seasons. But he was much better these 2 years. As you can see in the strikeout numbers, 31%, 28%. The ERA was significantly better. The xFIP numbers were way better. Could be just a weird outlier year here. But definitely cause for concern given those extreme dips across the board. But it does have the impact on the home run numbers for the Orioles. Even Tyler O'Neill at just 6.92. He hit 31 home runs last year. Monster from the heart of the order. And again, these are fair prices for Tyler O'Neill. Especially if he runs at the beginning of the season. From time to time he runs. But hopefully they actually limit that this season and try and keep him healthy. He only stole 4 bags last year because he ended up getting banged up a number of times. Jordan Westburg in the 3 spot in the projected lineup, 4,200. Very cheap on DraftKings for a guy who had an 11.8% barrel, 46.1% hard hit last year. Doesn't really strike out, doesn't walk that much. So you're talking about a ton of high-quality contact. Over 447 plate appearances, he hit 18 home runs. He had a 216 ISO. Created runs 25% better than average. Absolutely fire up the Westburg shares. Second and third base eligible for 32 on FanDuel is great. O'Hearn is great to have in this lineup too. For one, you're getting another lefty bat in there. But for DFS purposes, he's a super capable hitter. Kind of across the board. The power's kind of mid-grade, but he's capable of driving the ball. He had a 200-plus ISO year before, 163 last year, 15 home runs last year in 494 plate appearances. But the numbers are solid. He gets on base, he keeps the lineup moving, and he's affordable at first base. It's not a mistake to play him at first base if you're stacking this team. If you're going out of your way for Ryan O'Hearn one-offs, then we might need to have a chat. But he's very affordable. That FanDuel price, $2,600, very nice. Outfield eligibility as well. You can stick him out there. Ryan Mountcastle I talked about yesterday. Really like the upside for him this year to bounce back as far as those power numbers go, especially in the home park where they've changed that wall in left field. Should help all their righties. But Mountcastle just took a big dip power-wise last year. He's better than those numbers, the 13 home runs, the 154 ISO last year. Still managed to create runs 8% better than average. Still did have a 45.2% hard hit rate, but he lost a ton of barrels. Lost 4 percentage points worth of barrels, essentially, or 3 and change. So I expect him to just make better contact this year. He is a better hitter than he was last year. Cedric Mullins, a huge day to start this season. I mentioned it yesterday, and we talked about it all last season. While he continued to have not a great year last year in terms of the triple slash at 234, 305, 405, still did hit 18 homers, stole 32 bags. This is a guy who's a former 30-30 guy. I would not be stunned to see him go 20-35, something like that this season in a good year. But I don't think we're getting him up to much better than, say, 250 in a good season. And it's probably going to linger down average-wise, on base-wise, in something like we saw last year. But as far as DFS, that's perfectly fine. I do not need batting average for DFS purposes. Don't really care. Especially from a guy who also steals bases. So he can just fill categories 3,200, 2,700. Just need that 1-2 good plate appearances. I don't really care if he goes 4 for 5. It's nice, but also depends on the quality. Ramon Urias, just a cheap bat that can come through. He had 11 home runs last year. He's got a little bit of underrated power. 3 positions on FanDuel is where he really finds value for 23. On DraftKings, 2,400, mix and match piece, but he's very playable from this lineup. Jackson Holiday, 37.25, shortstop on DraftKings. I like him less at short than I do at second for 25 on FanDuel, but a highly playable kid. What did he actually do yesterday? I don't recall seeing him do much of anything. He scored 12 runs. He must have done something. One of the reasons that this show is going to start early in the afternoon is because of these little detours that we tend to take. 1 for 5 with a run scored, 2 strikeouts. Not a rip-roaring start to the season, but at least he got involved. As discussed yesterday, the kid is still one of the top pedigree young players in baseball. So I think you just continue going right back there and including him while he's cheap. And there's a pretty strong chance that he's going to be a lot more expensive and hitting higher in the batting order soon. On the Blue Jays side, Bo Bichette, 42-28. Very, very cheap for the talent. Miserable half a season last year, as we talked about. 225, 277, 322. That on base is abysmal. Created runs 29% worse than average. from a guy who's widely considered to be, a B caliber star. But you're getting him at a great price. He's going to hit ahead of Vladdy Guerrero. Killer spot in this lineup. Going up against Charlie Morton, the ancient one. Charlie had a decent year last year. 4.19 ERA with a 3.99 xFIP underneath it. 23.8% Ks, walked 9.3%, but still induced 11.4% swinging. Not bad. Wasn't terrible with the home run, 3.28. You'd like a little bit less than that, but not bad. And still, as mentioned before, induced some ground balls. Kept that launch angle down, so he's difficult to homer against. But you do see some more power coming through a little bit from the key Blue Jays up at the top. The rough thing with this Blue Jays lineup, though, is, and we saw this last year, it kind of does trail off. Like, they've got Andres Jimenez in here, and he had a decent day yesterday, and he's an okay player. But we never really saw that bat develop in terms of being able to drive the ball, in terms of being able to make premium contact. So he's a questionable bat in the 4, 5, 6 range. George Springer, dramatically on the decline as of last year. Kind of problematic, but one of the better names that you find after the 3 spot. Alejandro Kirk, it's okay. Doesn't strike out a ton. More of a better for real baseball kind of a guy as a catcher. And then a lot of question marks down bottom. Will Wagner, Ernie Clement, Alan Roden. Roden, the rookie who made the team out of camp. So this is a very top-heavy Blue Jays lineup. These guys at the bottom, though, very cheap and can help drive the machine and can help wrap back around up toward the top there. And we saw quality out of Will Wagner last year in 86 plate appearances. He went 305, 337, 451. Created runs 25% better than average. Didn't really crush the ball. Well, actually, the contact was quite good. 9.1% barrels and 50% hard hits. The power output, though, the results, 146 ISO. And I got to pull the board up. Why am I doing this against the screen? 146 ISO and 2 home runs. So made very good contact, but didn't really achieve a ton of great extra base hit and home run results in his very limited sample. It's kind of unfair to even discuss that. But the contact was good. Clement, 452 plate appearances, 12 homers, 12 steals. Okay for counting stats, but that on base has to come way up. 284, unsustainable low on base. That's what the big bulk of the 6% below average for run creation comes from. All right, can you go lie down and find something to do? No? Doc's back there licking my fingers while I'm trying to talk. But a top-heavy Blue Jays team, you can still get there. As mentioned, these guys at the very bottom are super cheap bargain chips in a stack that can help get to other pieces in a lineup, get to better pitching, as long as you're getting the key bats from the top end. And the 2 main guys, Vladdy Guerrero and Anthony Santander. 74 combined home runs last year, 30 for Vladdy, 44 for Santander. You're talking about 2 very different hitters, though. Vladdy's the superstar here. He's about to make a $500 million at least. 221 ISO last year, created a run 65% better than average, hit 30 bombs, 323, 396, 544. D-Row mentioned it on MLB Central this morning when they were talking about park factors. They were talking about that season they played in the minor league park for the Blue Jays. And he was like, yeah, maybe Vladdy Guerrero got overrated for some of the numbers that he put up. People still talk about that. It's like, no, come on, man. Look at last year. Dude's a superstar. Don't overthink it. If you're looking at the Blue Jays against Charlie Morton, play Vladdy Guerrero. Santander for only 4,900 on DraftKings, too. 11.7% barrels last year. Again, 44 home runs. That's nothing to sneeze at. 3,400 on FanDuel. Very affordable. Gun's in the house. What's going on, Gun? Good to see you, buddy. Everybody check out the MLB grind with Gundacker as well. I know Gun's doing shows. He's got content up. That's after the show done. And I mean, if you're going that route, you don't use your hands to scoop it out. Come on. All right, let's get back on track after that. Oh, Gun just got done doing a show. Right on. Yeah, I was mentioning that yesterday. I'm not sure if it was after you bounced out, but yeah, we gotta talk. Got to figure some stuff out for that, for sure, because people are mentioning it here as well. How'd the show go? Good. Probably get some of your people follow you right in the door too. But yeah, a lot of back and forth there, and definitely, I think we got to put our heads together, and we also got to make sure that we're not going on at the same time and colliding as well. So I do think you can get away with some shares of Charlie Morton. It's 7,000, 8,000. It's reasonable, but Charlie didn't go that deep in the spring, so I'm kind of concerned about what the pitch count actually looks like here. And we saw that have an impact yesterday. We had a handful of guys pitch 6. I think in the night game, Logan Gilbert ended up going 7. But a lot of guys capped around 5 and change. And that's kind of what I did with the innings again today. Where's Charlie? Yeah, Charlie made 4 outings in the spring. He only got up to 11 hitters. 3 innings, 11 hitters. Only allowed 1 hit. He was really good in all these in 3 of these outings. In the last one, he only went 2 innings, faced 10 hitters, gave up 3 runs on 5 hits, and only struck out 1. That was against Atlanta, but meaningless. But what concerns me there is what the depth actually looks like. Aging pitcher and so forth. So we've got kind of a low innings projection, kind of a mid overall projection. But if he defies that, if he comes through and ends up pitching 6 innings, you could easily get a decent enough start here. So as a value, especially as an SP2 value, you could throw that dart. But he's in no way a priority. Gausman, it's really going to depend. Is it this Kevin Gausman? Or is it the guy we kind of used to know? If it's last year's Kevin Gausman, I want nothing to do with this spot. And I think we just kind of wait and see. Especially on FanDuel at 86. He projects out okay. There's a lot of history in that projection. Don't love this. And not against one of the top implied totals of the day. Not against one of the top run-scoring teams potentially in baseball this season. Mitch Keller going for the Pirates up against the Marlins. We saw Paul Skeens have an okay day. Who knows what we're going to get out of Mitch. He's radically different prices, though. 9,800 on FanDuel. FanDuel just kind of pricing it for a matchup against the Marlins, which makes sense. DraftKings, only 79. That plays. And that's a semi-expensive SP2. It's not even expensive. It's a mid SP2. It's not a discount, but it could be a high-end option at that price. 21.5% Ks last year is not elite. He's been better than that in years past. Year before last, probably his best overall season. 4.21 ERA, a 3.70 xFIP, 25% strikeouts. Dipped by 4 percentage points to 21.5% for the Ks last year. Even on essentially the same swinging strike, lost 0.4 off swinging strikes, but that's still fine. Not a great strike thrower, but doesn't walk a ton of hitters. 6.5% walk rate last year, 6.7 the year before. 4.25 ERA, a 4.08 xFIP. This is who Mitch Keller is. He's going to give up runs. He's going to look tantalizing. We've been trying. We're going on 10 years with Mitch Keller at this point. Yeah, maybe it hasn't been as long as I thought. 6 years. Yeah, this is his 7th, but still, we've been chasing the Mitch Keller thing. And you get there from time to time, and this is a spectacular spot for him. Projects out just fine. But it's a frustrating guy to get to. That upside can come and go. Great arsenal of pitches, but only grades out to a 99 on Stuff Plus, so grades out average. 1.30 whip puts too many guys on base, allows too many opportunities. Doesn't really struggle with premium contact. Home runs were under 3% last year. Hard hits were under 40. Exit velo fine. Barrels fine. So again, there are good aspects here, and it's a great matchup. As I said yesterday, the only real talented option in this Marlins lineup, at least right now at the major league level, is Xavier Edwards, the leadoff hitter. Other than that, you've got a big just mishmash of a lineup. They'll have their days through the season for sure. There are some potentially talented hitters on this team. Kyle Stowers has a little bit of pop. Matt Mervis is supposed to have a little bit of pop. We'll see what we get, though. So Keller could have his day. Really like him at that price on DraftKings. I'm sure he's going to be popular over there. On FanDuel, I struggle to get there. What does that rank out on the board? Yeah, I mean, do I want to spend $9,800 for a guy basically in the middle of the board? Yeah, there's a lot of commonality of projection through these guys. Especially if he gets popular. I don't know. A 4-run day out of Miami ruins that Mitch Keller play at $9,800. Unless he happens to strike out 14 on the way. On the other side, Connor Gillespie, I think we're just saying no thank you. Doesn't really project out well. He's only 63 on DraftKings. So if you really wanted to go that route, I guess. Minor league numbers last year. In 15 starts, 27 total outings. Had a 4.05 ERA in AAA with Cleveland. That translated to a 5.16 xFIP and a 5.42 FIP. Had a 25% strikeout rate, but a 10.1% walk rate. It's difficult to see this translating really well out of the gate at the major league level. Did make 3 appearances in relief last year for Cleveland. 2.25 ERA, 5.12 xFIP. Did strike out 25% of the several hitters that he faced. 15.6% walk rate, though, with that. Not expecting much here. Capable enough Pirates lineup that I think you could dabble as far as a cheap stack. Tommy Pham in the leadoff role, 3,600, 2,700. Mediocre year last year, 478 plate appearances, 9 home runs, 7 stolen bases, and 91 WRC+. Still has that strong skill set for DFS, though. Guy who can drive the ball, a guy who can swipe bags. Not completely crazy to consider him in a stack for 36 for 27 in the outfield. The hitters that we actually like from this team, though, kind of range from the 2 through 5 in this lineup, with maybe some Andy Rodriguez if he's there for very cheap at the bottom. Brian Reynolds on that second, third tier of, not a superstar, but a very competent player with good numbers over the years. 275, 344, 447 last year. Created runs 18% better than average. Fills categories, 24 homers, 10 steals last year. We talked about O'Neal Cruz and his prodigious power, his ridiculous swing that rivals the very, very best power hitters in baseball. I love O'Neal Cruz for a monster season this year. 21 homers last year, a 190 ISO. It's difficult to see on that side of the board. As I pointed out yesterday, and I pulled up that swing speed graph that I love, but it's right there. You can see it. It just needs to translate. This production does not match that. So, I think we're in for big things. He's under 5,000 on DraftKings at 3,400 with shortstop eligibility still on FanDuel. Love that. I think you plunk him right in at shortstop, especially on an outfield-heavy team, because then you can still go with a 4-man with Tommy Pham, Brian Reynolds, and Andrew McCutchen. So I think that's great, having that shortstop eligibility. That's going to go away. But while we've got it, I think we take advantage of it. Joey Bart, quality catcher, 3,400 on DraftKings. Where it matters, it's a fine price. I'm not going to go out of my way to grab Joey Bart. It's not the reason to go to the Pirates, but if you're stacking up Pirates, you could absolutely use him if he's hitting in that, anywhere 3 through 6. 2,800 on FanDuel. It's more mix and matchy because you don't need the catcher spot. So do I really want to occupy a util of first base, Joey Bart? Unless I'm just really heavily investing in the Pirates and getting, in any lineup that I have stacked, he's absolutely a consideration, but he's not a priority on the FanDuel slate. That's why I kind of lean like shortstop and the 3 outfielders out of the top on FanDuel. And getting McCutchen 2,800, there is still more power there. The upside, the reliability. We could see, I mentioned it yesterday, McCutchen's been on the decline as far as the average, as far as the on-base. We could see the on-base come back to life a little bit, though, this season. Wouldn't shock me. He dipped from a 15.9% walk rate to an 11.3% walk rate. Was that because his vision got worse year over year as he ages? Who knows? But that could come right back, and we could see him have a better OBP, better run creation numbers, and be a little bit more relevant. And he still hit 20 home runs last year. Still had an 11.7% barrel rate. The hard hits were way down, but the barrels were up. And it could swing the other way, where he just focuses more on power. And we just see a little bit of a uptick in those numbers at the expense of a little bit of the average in the on-base, kind of like what we saw last year. But I still think as long as he's going to roll out there, Andrew McCutchen, very playable. Nick Gonzalez, not a bad season in 387 plate appearances, but not a great DFS option. Only 7 home runs, 5 steals in that stretch, just a 128 ISO. He's fine to plug in as a spare part at second base, but he's in no way a priority. Not that you really need to fire up. Anthony Rodriguez at 2,000, 2,300 is a catcher on FanDuel, but it doesn't matter. Catcher, first base, same thing. First base on DraftKings for the dead min price. Kind of interesting. Endy in, where's the most recent relevant number? AAA in 23, just 6 home runs in 315 plate appearances, and then made 204 plate appearances in the show and just hit 3 while going 220, 284, 328. He had a really strong slash line that season in AAA, though, 268, 356, 415. Didn't really strike out, drew a ton of walks. The year before that in the minors, across 4 levels of the minor leagues, rapid acceleration from low A to triple A in the same season. Over 531 combined plate appearances, he hit 25 homers. Went 323, 407, 590, 266 ISO, struck out 19%, walked 11.3%. That is a very interesting hitter. 24, about to turn 25, kind of coming into his own. So, Endy down here, especially if he moves up in the lineup, could be really interesting. Give me him in the 6 spot instead of Nick Gonzalez. Ke'Bryan Hayes, perfectly fine as far as making contact, but it doesn't really result in anything. Just 233, 283, 290 last year, despite a 42.9% hard hit rate. He just doesn't barrel the ball. Year before, 48.4% hard hit rate. Doesn't strike out, doesn't draw a ton of walks, so there is bat on ball there, but the quality just doesn't come through. Player that I expected to be a lot better than this as a hitter, and we really haven't seen it arrive ever. IKF is a spare part at the bottom of that lineup. On the Marlins side, as mentioned, if you're going anywhere, it's this guy who's truly interesting. Very good hit tool at 328, 397, 423 and a half season last year, over 303 plate appearances. Speed burn, stole 31 bases last season in that small sample. Just a guy who typically is going to need help from his friends. If he gets on 3 times and steals 3 bags, sure, you've got a decent fantasy score on your hands for 4,000, 3,200. I actually like him a lot better on DraftKings now that I'm seeing that FanDuel price. 32 is not expensive, but I don't know that I want to sink 3,200 and my shortstop share into Xavier Edwards and then be really limited on the back end of that stack with anybody else. If you're looking at a one-off shortstop, it's fine, but Kyle Stowers did have a 10.9% barrel, 51.3% hard hit last year. That resulted in 3 home runs in his 209 plate appearances and a 125 ISO. Another guy who this doesn't translate to this quite often. This is way underperforming that quality of contact. But he also struck out 35.4% of the time. Kind of a free swinging guy who, if he makes contact and gets lucky, you could see something with Xavier Edwards on ahead of him. But I don't love that spot. 6.08, their leading home run number. Matt Mervis a couple spots later, 5.53 in the home run model. Didn't hit any in his 28 plate appearances last year, but I'll pull up his minor league numbers because he was a relevant prospect with the Cubs. In 2022, across 3 levels, high A to triple A in the minors, he hit 36 home runs, 309, 379, 605. 2023, he hit 22 home runs in triple A, and then another 3 in 99 plate appearances in the show. And then last season, in 350 plate appearances in AAA for the Cubs, he hit 35 home runs, and he hit none in the show, as I just mentioned. But getting a regular opportunity here, kind of universally projected around 15 home runs for this season. But we could see a little bit more than that if the actual talent comes through. If you're playing Marlins, you can absolutely look in this direction, and I would encourage you to, because he's really one of the only other things they've got. So Edwards, Stowers, Mervis. Jonah Bride hit 11 home runs in 272 plate appearances last year, had a 185 ISO, did create runs 23% better than average, but very mediocre as far as the contact numbers go. last 2 seasons and whatever the sample from 2 years ago looks like. He did draw walks. He didn't really strike out each of the last 2 years, so you do at least get that. I think he's playable, but you've got either you're positionally conflicted with Matt Mervis or you're putting him one at first and one at third, and I don't love occupying both corner infields with Marlins. Seems a little dicey in terms of the lineup's total power upside. Otto Lopez, 6 home runs, 20 steals, and 434. Creator runs 9% worse than average. Mediocre. Griff Conine, maybe you get a little something out of. 268, 326, 451 last year with a 114 WRC+. Contact was kind of average. Derek Hill, a mix and match piece. Graham Pauley, dead min priced on both sites at third base. Maybe that's where you go with that third base share if you're bound and determined to sink it in. Pauley hit 14 minor league home runs last season across AAA, 2 different organizations of AAA, the Padres and the Marlins, and AA with the Marlins. In 2023, he hit 23 home runs and stole 22 bases in the Padres system. 308, 393, 538. So another potentially young up and coming player. 24 and a half. At the dead min price, that's probably where I go. I just wish you could get him like in that Otto Lopez spot. Maybe you do. And then Nick Fortes at the bottom is entirely skippable. Best thing coming out of this game is probably Mitch Keller, but I hate that FanDuel price. And then, actually, the best thing coming out of this game is definitely O'Neal Cruz as an individual hitter. If you're looking at one-off, 4,800, 3,400, if you've got an expensive spot, but maybe, damn, I don't have enough to get Ohtani, don't discount O'Neal Cruz as a just superstar caliber one-off. I really do think we're going to get that kind of a year from O'Neal Cruz. Pretty sure this is going to be the chalk of the day with the Red Sox up the top of the board. See what people are talking about in the chat. Jay Gentile's here saying, "Yer." Andy likes the idea of the Gundaker-McBride collaboration. I'm all in. I definitely think it's worth doing. We've done it before. Gunn knows I appreciate him, a couple years ago when he was doing his regular thing and I was just starting out rotoscouts. By the way, check out rotoscouts.com. Check out MLB Grind with Gundaker as well. See, we're collaborating already. But he had me on the show a couple times over there so that I could spread the word that I was actually doing this. That was when the site was free. Under $1 a day now, though. Not asking for much. That gives you access to MLB, NBA, and NHL. Every main slate for all of those through the playoffs for NBA and NHL. So the Boston Red Sox let us down yesterday. But as mentioned, when we broke it down on both shows, 3 baseball shows in 36 hours, by the way. Love it. But as mentioned, they were facing a tough pitcher. Eovaldi, I have a very healthy respect for Nathan Eovaldi, and he came through. He had a good start, struck out, I think, 9. But today we get Jack Leiter. 6,500 on DraftKings, 7,300 on FanDuel. The projection is low. I do think there's maybe a little meat on the bone given the upside that we saw, the improvements that we saw in spring from Jack Leiter. But I don't necessarily want to chase it directly into the buzzsaw that I think this Red Sox lineup could be this season. We did see Wilyer Abreu come through with 2 bombs yesterday. We talked about him and the ridiculous contact that he made and the way that he was kind of underrated for the year that he had last year and the fact that he was very cheap as far as DFS. And look where he's priced again today. You get a lot of discounts in that Red Sox lineup for some quality players. Guys all the way up at the top, the obvious guys, the chalky guys, are expensive-ish. But Tristan Casas is not appropriately priced. This Red Sox team is going to get really, really popular in this spot. Jack Leiter in the spring made, 6 appearances. Maxed out at 6 innings in his most recent outing, faced 27 hitters. That is a essentially full start. Got to give him full credit for that. Gave up 3 earned runs on 11 hits in that one, struck out 4, walked 1. But the overall, pretty solid. 21 strikeouts across like 20 innings. So like a strikeout an inning. And got really nicely stretched out, was missing bats, and looked kind of like the pitcher that he's looked like in the minors. We saw him get a cup of coffee last year, 35 2/3, that did not go well. Gave up a 4.05% home run rate in the small sample, ton of premium contact. Both of those are way over the threshold. We're looking for 40+% is a problem here, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo is a problem there. 9.8% barrels is aggressive. fly ball trajectory pitcher, and didn't really strike anybody out, walked a ton. Walks were his problem basically through his development. But we're talking about a kid who was a former number 1 overall pick. In 23, across 2 levels of the minors, AA and AAA, in 2023, he struck out 30%, but walked 13.2%. So, little good, little bad in there. 5.19 ERA with a 4.67 xFIP. In 2024, he made 16 starts in AAA, 77 innings. That sample was 20 starts and 85 innings, by the way, in the 2023 year. So 2024, he struck out 33% at AAA, but walked 10.6. Had a 4.22 FIP, had a 4.31 xFIP, and a nice tidy 3.51 ERA. I think we'll get dinged a little bit for runs, but it wouldn't shock me at all if the strikeouts start coming through. I think it's going to be problematic around the walks for a little while, now that we're at the full major league level. And he did walk hitters through the spring. 3 walks in 1 start, 5 walks against the Angels spring squad on the 11th. But got a lot of buzz for just how his stuff was grading out through the spring. What it looks like. So, while the Red Sox look great, there is that looming idea that the kid could come out and put his stamp on the start of his season. This is the Jack Leiter breakout year. You never know. So a little bit of a threat to get kind of the same thing that we saw yesterday with Eovaldi just taking this team off the board from one of the higher projected places. But we're going to be talking about these Red Sox all season. I like the nature of this lineup. Jarren Duran is a star up top who just fills categories for DFS. 207 ISO last year. He hit 21 home runs. Drives the ball effectively, 43.7% hard hits, 9.1% barrels. Doesn't strike out much at 21.8. Needs to push that walk rate in the leadoff role. He had a 342 on base last year despite walking just 7.3%. So there's a little bit of BABIP baked into that as a 285 hitter. We need to push those walks to keep that leadoff role being viable. He could dip down to the 3 spot and be perfectly viable in that role as well, though. Stole 34 bases. That's why you'd like him as a table setter. 129 WRC+. Rafi Devers serving as the DH this season. 28 homers last year, 244 ISO. Getting him off the hot corner, I think, is going to do wonders for him overall. Already a superstar hitter, and I like him to go upward basically across the board. So could be a big year out of Devers. 5,000. Going to prove to be a little bit cheap for him. He'll kick up another couple $100 on DK. Under 4,000 at 38 on FanDuel. Definitely going to prove to be a little bit cheap for him. Alex Bregman, 4,800 second and third base eligibility. 3,300 on FanDuel, second and third base eligibility. Going to be playing third. Hit 26 home runs last year, 193 ISO. Solid season, 118 WRC+. Very Alex Bregman kind of a season. Going into last year, I was a little bit more concerned about him. We saw him put up basically similar numbers the year before that, but that 178 ISO that year kind of concerned me. We saw it bounce back a little bit, and the numbers were essentially the same year over year. I think this is just what we're getting out of Bregman. But in Fenway, in the long term, could see an uptick in the long term for offense. In this situation, going up against a rookie pitcher, gotta love Alex Bregman for 4,800, 3,300 across sites. And then, as mentioned, Tristan Casas. For 38, yes, please, against a kid who, in his tiny sample of major league appearances, has allowed a ton of home runs. And it's not really a ton. It's a 4.05% home run rate in 35 and 2/3 innings. It's probably, 3 home runs? Do I have that? What did he actually allow? It was 7 home runs. I'm gonna revise. He has allowed a ton of home runs in his tiny minor leagues, his tiny major league sample. 35 and 2/3 innings over 6 starts, 9 appearances, 7 home runs. That's problematic. 4+ is definitely key. So getting Tristan Casas with his ridiculous contact, 13.3% barrels, 45.2% hard hits last year, resulted in only 13 home runs in his 243 plate appearances, but a 222 ISO. Year before, in a more complete season, but not a complete season, 502 plate appearances, 24 home runs, a 226 ISO. The kid just needs to be on the field. This is a potentially elite power hitter first baseman. So fire up the Tristan Casas shares while he's cheap. He is the home run pick of the day on the website today. It's going to be popular, but not Rafi Devers popular. He was a little bit less popular than the top three. This lineup continues on, though. Trevor Story, mix and match piece at the absolute worst, still has talent. 255, 340, 394. Maybe the thing I'm interested in most is just that ability to get on base, keep the machine moving. But I think at the cheap price, buying him in the heart of the order from a team that we expect to be an upside spot today, I like that. I think that's a quality way to fill shortstop that maybe is going to get a little bit underappreciated by the general purchasing public out there. Christian Campbell, their prize rookie in the sixth spot. 3,300 on DraftKings at second base, 2,400 on FanDuel. Bargain. You can see how he projects pretty similarly to Trevor Story right above him, pretty similarly to Willie Abreu right below him. Kid can hit. 35-27 for Willie Abreu, who again hit 2 home runs yesterday. Dynamite contact, hit 15 last year, had a 206 ISO across 447 plate appearances, and just kind of got buried in the conversation, got buried in fantasy rankings this year. 114 WRC plus. What does the guy need to do? How about a nearly 50% hard hit rate 2 years running? I forget what the sample, it's a small sample, right? Yeah, 85 plate appearances that year. I checked that the other day. But still, I mean, that's 85 that held up to this, gives him basically a full season. 10.8% barrels this year. Willie Abreu is a good hitter. Down in the 7 spot for 35-27. Take advantage. Connor Wong, quality batted catcher, 283, 33, 425 last year. The power will come and go. Only ended up with 13 homers and a 145 ISO, but created runs 10% better than average. On DraftKings, where it matters at 37, you can play him there as your fifth man. Sedan Rafaela, at worst, is a stat filler, 15 homers and 19 steals last year. Ended up at 79 WRC plus, which is, as I mentioned yesterday, a little surprising given some of the counting stats, but it's very much due to the 274 on base. Needs to improve that dramatically to stay in the lineup with some kids pushing him from the minors. Tanner Houck had a pretty strong season last year, but not a big strikeout pitcher. Just 20.7% strikeouts. Did okay when in terms of the walks, 6.5% walk rate. Resulted in a 3.12 ERA, a 3.57 xFIP, a little bit higher there. Probably more truth in that xFIP number. 1.14 whip, not bad. But again, not a strong strike thrower in terms of inducing swinging strikes. He can generate called strikes. 29.1% CSW is fine. Just a 9.8% swinging. Stuff Plus does like the arsenal. What he's elite at is keeping the ball down. 3.9 degree average launch. Very, very good at limiting home runs. Just a 1.48% home run rate last year. 5.7% barrels. Did allow a 40+% hard hit, but it matters less when you're keeping the ball, as discussed multiple times over the years. If you're keeping the ball down that frequently, if you can't elevate the ball, you can't hit a home run, and it's having an impact. The only guys better than halfway to the magic number, Adolis Garcia, exactly halfway to 10 at 5 as far as a home run mark. Jock Pederson, 5.41. And then top of the board on the Rangers, 6.28 for Corey Seager. Seager hit 30 bombs last year, lefty bat. If anybody's going to do it, I like his upside to be that guy. But Tanner Houck is legitimately difficult to homer against. He's another pitcher who checks in very differently priced. 77, I think he's a very playable SP2 on the DraftKings slate. 91 on FanDuel, not that interested. He projects as a mid-board option. He's perfectly fine, you just don't expect a ton of Ks. This Rangers lineup, decent as far as limiting strikeouts, and some of their star hitters are excellent at limiting strikeouts. We talked about that yesterday. Marcus Semien off the top is one of those guys, 14.6% strikeouts. We saw a dip across the board for him last year, down to 237, 308, 391, just a 154 ISO, and ended up 1% worse than average for run creation. I like Semien to bounce back. 23 home runs last season is not bad, but it was a dip. Still ended up scoring more than 100 runs. Not that we talk about runs or RBIs as an individual stat all that often, but that is not completely irrelevant in terms of fantasy. And if he pushes the on-base into respectable territory as their leadoff man ahead of Corey Seager, Wyatt Langford, Jock Peterson, Adolis Garcia, this could be a potentially devastating lineup. They just had a down year last year across the board, kind of like the Braves. The Rangers just had that championship hangover. Adolis had a terrible year. Langford didn't have the breakout. He was fine, but he didn't have the huge season that everybody was expecting. Seager had a down year. They could come roaring back in a big, big way. Seager did hit 30 home runs, 278, 353, 512. But again, that's an oddly slightly down season in terms of the triple slash. 234 ISO, 140 WRC plus. Let's not call that a down year. It's a pretty fantastic season. But part of the overall dip. 15.2% barrels, 49.6% hard hits, still elite contact. Love the upside for Wyatt Langford all season, 4,400, 3,300, get him while he's cheap. Projects out very nicely today, but just a 4.22 in the home run model because, again, Tanner Houck, difficult to homer against. But Langford should continue to fill stats. Hit 16 homers, stole 19 bases in 557 opportunities last year. And I like the upside for more than that. I like the ISO to go up. I like the power to truly arrive this year. Was making good contact in that. 9.3% barrels and 43.4% hard hits. So the quality's already there. We just need to see the results come through. Jock, whenever he's in the lineup, perfectly fine. You fire away with Jock anytime you're going to this Rangers team. But again, Houck has the ability to take away what you really want from Jock Pederson, which is that massive home run upside. 23 homers last year as the platoon DH out in Arizona. I like him to exceed that mark this season, especially if they start giving him more plate appearances. 12.5% barrels, 45.4% hard hits with a 240 ISO. We know what Jock Pederson is. Adolis last year did make good contact, 12.2% barrels, 47.9% hard hits, but the homers took a big, big dip. As mentioned, over the last 4 seasons, he averaged 30.5 with a peak of 39 2 years ago and a low point of 25 last year. I really like him to come roaring back, at least in terms of the power. But there is some swing and miss built in there. He had a pretty high whiff rate last year across a number of pitches, dipped down to a 176 ISO overall. Really problematic season from him. As an owner of him in the Dynasty League, that was a big challenge. 4,700 on DraftKings, though. Way too cheap for the quality, what the upside, what the true ceiling looks like. But again, say it with me, Tanner Houck's difficult to homer against. Josh Young, 37-28. You can get some quality there. 7 homers, 4 steals, and 188 last year. Did create runs in a positive sense. Buzzy kind of a prospect guy a couple years ago, and has just missed time. Only 188 plate appearances last season. But like the upside there, and another guy who's currently very cheap, 37-28. Jonah Heim, Jake Berger, Leody Taveras, mix and match pieces. Berger did hit 29 home runs last season, a 209 ISO. I like the upside in terms of the power, but I don't like that spot in the batting order. We need him more, 6-7. But you can get away with some Jake Berger. He's a high strikeout guy. You'll get a lot of zeros, but you'll get a lot of decent home run output from him. Taveras is a mix and match outfielder, but he went 12-23 last year. Year before, 14-14. And had a decent slash line, but ended up creating runs below average both seasons. So just a cheap spot filler, maybe a capable wraparound guy. Again, the Red Sox like that spot a lot, and Tristan Casas, home run pick of the day. Tyler McGill, speaking of another buzzy spring guy, 26.7% strikeouts last season is kind of noteworthy in his 14 starts, his 72 and a third innings. 3.98 ERA, 3.89 xFIP is problematic. The 9.6% walk rate is not exactly sparkling. Gave up a lot of premium contact with a 9.3% barrel, 41.2% hard hits. But that resulted in just a 1.93% home run rate. It's kind of in the middle as far as that 13.4 degree average launch goes, but not a problematic home run rate. Just gave up a few too many opportunities at a 1.27 whip. But did induce a 12.5% swinging strike rate. Had a very nice 7% above average, 7 points above average stuff plus rating. So the arsenal is there. The swinging strikes are there. The actual strikeouts, he was putting hitters away. There's some quality. In 126 in the third innings the year before, didn't look anything like that. So year-over-year improvement there. In 9 starts the season before that, this guy looked more like this guy than he does that year. So the season where we actually got him for 25 starts didn't really come through for him. But if he's getting a full opportunity here, I kind of like the upside, at least for, see what we get. Struck out 5, 6, and 5 going back over his final 3 spring starts. 5 and a third, 5 innings, and 4 innings. So we're talking about somebody who's basically stretched out. Was getting, again, a lot of buzz from a lot of the pitching nerds on in the Twitter baseball community. Deion Sanders now among the top 10 highest paid coaches in college football. Congratulations, Prime. So 6,000 for Tyler McGill. The only thing working against him, 7,700 for him on FanDuel. The only thing working against him, just like we saw with Clay Holmes yesterday, is this Astros lineup. I hate the spot. I'm super interested in finding out what Tyler McGill really is. I hope he's not that good today because I don't think I'm going to get there very much on FanDuel. Might have a little. But I don't think it's the day. I don't know who he's going to face 5 days from now, but that's probably when we want to check him out. It's not impossible to have a good start against the Astros, but as highlighted yesterday, just look at all these mid-teens to high-teens strikeout rates. If you're under 20%, you're essentially elite at avoiding the strikeout, and they've got a ton of their hitters, and all of their key hitters outside of Christian Walker are that. So it's a problematic lineup for anybody's upside. And especially if we're talking about a kid who has a little bit of an issue with walks, a little bit of an issue with premium contact, although, again, didn't really result in home runs. I just don't necessarily want to kick it around. As an SP2 at 6,000 is just a bargain bin, fire away. You can take a big chunk of Tyler McGill on the DraftKings slate, and he's probably not going to be crazy popular, I would expect. It's not safe, right? You're taking a big risk if you do that in terms of the downside with those lineups. But I do think there's a strong upside to be had for that price. Yeah, low single digits projected ownership via the site that I'm looking at. So I think you can get there on DK. FanDuel at 77, I want it a lot less. Synthetic points out Garcia had a wrist injury early, the type of thing that lingers all year. Yeah, he had a number of bumps along the way. He also had a thing in the playoffs, if you remember, the year before. So yeah, just a lot of things working against him last year. I love the upside. Kid Kobe, we hit that game already, but no, I don't see anything for Gillespie. If you rewind slightly, you can get the whole rundown on that one. But just to do it for you again real quick, he did come up with a 25% strikeout rate in AAA, but walked 10+%, had a 5+ xFIP. I really don't see it. He's also 26, so it's not like we're talking about an up-and-coming kid. This is like a quad A type pitcher at best. So I really don't think you go to the Gillespie spot. I kind of like the Pirates bats against. If you're out there, hit the like button. If you're not out there, hit the like button as well, but it would be weird if you could hear me. But everybody watching, if you get a chance, the like button down. It's down there, but you hit it and it's a thumbs up. If you don't like the show, go ahead and hit the thumbs down. Screw you too. Check out rotoscouts.com. Under $1 a day for access to everything. Everything. Hunter Brown is interesting. 8,800, 9,400. The price is not incorrect. I like him probably a little bit better at the DraftKings price, but I'll pay that FanDuel price, I think. I just have a healthy respect also for this Mets lineup, but there are Ks there. That's the important difference. So while this Mets team is threatening in terms of several all-world hitters in Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, several very good power bats, they are a fairly heavy strikeout team outside of essentially Lindor and Soto. Everybody else, 20+%. You can see the average is 24.2%. Average is right here, by the way, for those unfamiliar with the sheet. These are the 24 rates, 23 rates, as the headings actually say. But the average numbers are right down there. So I think Hunter Brown, given the strides that we saw him take last season, 3.49 ERA, a 3.47 xFIP over 170 innings in 30 starts, 25.1% Ks, 8.4% walks is a little higher than you'd want, but it's not egregious. 10.3% swinging strike, needs to push the called strikes a little bit or boost the swinging and get that CSW up into the 30% range, and then we'll be talking about an elite pitcher. But definitely made some strides, was excellent at avoiding hard hits, just a 30.3% hard hit rate, 86.2 miles an hour of exit velo on average. This is a kid who could potentially just take the power out of teams. It resulted in a 2.53% home run rate last year. That's already very good, just a 4.5% barrel under a 10-degree average launch angle. So you're talking about weak contact, medium contact on the ground primarily from a kid who could strike people out. This is, if they mold him along the lines of a right-handed Framber Valdez, they could do a lot worse. But right now, already looking pretty good and getting a matchup here at a reasonable enough price against a free-swinging Mets squad. They could, though, again, do damage to him. So I think he's very playable, but not exactly safe for a high price. At the top of the Mets lineup, Lindor remains a superstar shortstop. He's very expensive at $54,000, but he's obviously worth paying for. I do think you can play Mets bats against Hunter Brown here. You can see that the power numbers are coming through for the Mets. 2 guys over the 10 spot in the home run model. Juan Soto at 10.35, Pete Alonso at 10.52, and then another couple guys in decent areas, and they're the ones you would expect, Mark Vientos and Francisco Lindor up at the top. Brown did allow a 3.91% home run rate in his 155 and 2/3 in 29 starts year before last. That's where most of that's coming from. So this guy from last year made dramatic improvements in that department. Bear that in mind if you're rostering Mets today. The power went away against for all his opponents last year. So that's accounted for in the model. It's just a collision of two very different seasons. But at the beginning of last year, going against only the 2023 numbers, these would have been dramatically higher for those Mets home run hitters. But I think that the trend will continue, and we'll see Hunter Brown continue to limit power. That's why I'm not excited about the Mets, but I think they're playable. Alonso, 13.1% barrels, 45.9% hard hits, hit 34 home runs, 222 ISO last season. Tremendous. Hitting behind Juan Soto should be a pretty fantastic opportunity for essentially anybody, but for a power hitter like that, given Soto's ridiculous ability to reach first base, granted he's also got prodigious power of his own, but could be a nice year for Alonso, who, as I've mentioned, I think on both shows for yesterday's slate, and I'll say it again, absurd that he couldn't find a job and had to end up coming back to the Mets for less pay than he wanted. 34 home runs last year, one of the best home run hitters over the past few seasons. Nimmo at 4,300, perfectly playable, 22 home runs, 15 steals last season, 172 ISO, 109 WRC+. The power's been better, 193 ISO the year before, and just a 159 the year before that. So we saw a bit better of a power output, 24 homers, a 193 ISO in 23 from Nimmo. We saw the average dip a little bit, down year overall, but that's why you're getting him cheap. 4,000 on DraftKings. 33 on FanDuel is about right, but 4,000 on DraftKings, a little bit light. Mark Vientos, 46, 34. FanDuel price appropriate. DraftKings probably 100 or 2 light, especially for a guy who had 27 home runs and only 450 plate appearances. Did this contact-wise. We talked about it all through last season. I'm going to keep harping on it until they get that price correct. Everybody at the bottom of the lineup is cheap. Jesse Winker, Jose Siri, Brett Beatty, Luis Torrens. The only guy that's not at least somewhat interesting for DFS in that group is Luis Torrens. So cue the 2 home run day out of him. But 18 home runs, 14 steals out of Jose Siri last year. He's a 187, 255, 366 hitter. So take what you get and be happy about it in terms of those counting stats. But he's playable at those prices for DFS if you're stacking Mets. He's not somebody you necessarily want to go grab as a one-off, but he's also not completely off the board in that conversation. 14.6% barrels is going to put you in that mix at 2,800, 2,500. 6.40 in the home run model. It's a respectable enough option. 14 home runs, 14 steals out of Jesse Winker, and we know there's a little bit more in that lefty bat. Got on base at a 360 clip in a very nice year last year. 151 ISO is just okay, 118 WRC+. Maybe more doubles, but a quality bat from down in the lineup for only 29, 28. It's a very good option. Brett Beatty, if he's in the lineup, 27, 23. Perfectly capable lefty bat who made the team out of camp. There's a lot of talk about maybe getting traded across town to the Yankees to play third base. That didn't come to fruition. But this is a talented kid. I like the upside for very, very cheap pricing. So this lineup runs 8 men deep on for stacking purposes. Just not potentially a great spot to stack Mets because of what I suspect is a true ability to limit premium contact and power. On the Astros side, we know this lineup pretty well, at least on the top 6 guys here. Jose Altuve remains a star. He's fairly priced. 51 is maybe a little high on DraftKings. 35 is about right on FanDuel, though. Second base and outfield eligibility, going to be playing mostly in the outfield this year. 20 homers, 22 steals last year. I like him to return to about those levels, maybe a little bit more. Still an excellent slash line, still a good run creator. Isaac Paredes for very cheap. As we talked about yesterday, I showed you guys the numbers on StatCast. I showed you guys the home run plotting. It is all about the left field corner in home games and a few other exclusive stadiums around the league. And otherwise, you just don't want Isaac Paredes. He's not a very good hitter. He's okay at avoiding the strikeouts. He's okay at drawing walks. But, I mean, even in a decent year last year, 238, 346, the on-base is there because of those walks. But 238, 346, 393, the slug is awful. That's a 739 OPS, which is okay, but it's only saved by his ability to draw the walk. 155 ISO, not good. If you were here yesterday, you saw his StatCast board where everything is blue in terms of the contact, and you can see it right here. The last 2 seasons, we're talking about just 4.5% barrels, 27.1% hard hits. If he plays in parks with a deep left field corner, it's problematic. This is not a guy who crushes the baseball. He just has that pull side fly ball ability. But he's hitting in the home park anyway. That would have been the very best for him last year. He would have hit 26 home runs in this if he had his games in this park last season. So it's a major upside spot when you get him at 41, 3,000 hitting between Jose Altuve and Jordan Alvarez in home games. And like if they're playing the Rays in Tampa. Well, no, the Rays are in a different field now. 5,700, 4,100, perfectly fine to pay those prices for Jordan Alvarez, one of the very best hitters in all of baseball. 259 ISO last season, 308, 392, 567, does everything very, very well. Draws walks, doesn't strike out, crushes the ball when he makes contact. There's nothing not to love about Jordan Alvarez. Full stop. 4,600 and 3,500 for Christian Walker. Nice price on DraftKings at 46. I'll buy that all day. 13.3% barrels, 48% hard hits last year, resulted in 26 home runs, a 217 ISO. Year before, we did see 33 home runs and a 239 ISO, 36 home runs and a 235 the year before that. So a minor dip in power, a minor dip in overall output, but part of that is also just baked into the 100 fewer plate appearances year over year. Probably would have been at the same home run totals, but the ISO did come down a little bit year over year. I don't think there's any true concern there. I just love the price there on DraftKings. I think that's a great buy. 24% strikeouts. The strikeouts did go up a little bit, 19.2% the year before. Previously, he had been very, very good in terms of those 30+ home run seasons with a sub 20% strikeout rate. That is truly elite. Even if he's striking out 24, 25%, and he could go right back to sub 20. But even if he's in this range, he's perfectly fine, especially when he's surrounded by guys like this. But in terms of the Astros' overall ability to avoid the strikeouts, let's not forget where he was previous to last season. So it could look like this at the top of that lineup and be even better than what it would average out to if the average was there. Cam Smith screwing up that average right now. Yainer Diaz, mentioned him yesterday, ridiculously cheap at 4,200, 2,900. Came through, I know I saw a highlight of at least a base hit up the middle. I think he drove in a run. But just I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. One of the truly best just overall hit tools from a player at any position in all of baseball. And you can put him at catcher. Don't overthink it. Just play Yainer Diaz if you're playing on DraftKings. If you're playing on FanDuel, you can consider him a second first baseman on this team and just go first base util with both those players. But if you have to decide between, I slightly prefer Christian Walker. But Yainer Diaz is truly that good and could be in for a very nice season. Last year, he had a good year. 299, 325, 441 over 619 plate appearances. The power dipped. He only hit 16 home runs despite the 600-plus plate appearances. Year before, in 377, he hit 23 home runs, had a 256 ISO, while going 282, 308, 538. So in some ways, he improved as far as the triple slash, but the power did dip. He lost a few barrels. 7.6 in the full season versus 12.2, but the hard hits actually went up. The strikeouts were great. He doesn't walk, so we're talking about just constant bat on ball. Some guys you don't really care if they don't draw walks, especially if they don't strike out. If they strike out a ton and don't draw walks, it's a problem. If they don't strike out, don't draw walks, it just means they connect. Fantastic hit tool. This kid could go 300, hit more than 20 home runs as a catcher. Jeremy Pena, I'm not in love with, but 15 homers, 20 steals. You can't really quibble with the production in terms of the counting stats. Just a 100 WRC plus. He's perfectly fine. He had a hot spring. You can play Jeremy Pena to your heart's content if you're rostering the Astros, but he's my lowest priority among the top 6. Cam Smith, we talked about, breakout season, made the team out of camp. Quality bat. little bit of power in there. Brendan Rodgers and Jake Myers, at least mix and match quality guys at the bottom. You got 13 home runs out of each guy last year, but below average run creators in the long term. $47 people hanging out. Cujo's here. Lone Wolf's here. The person who pointed out the wrist injury was, by the way, hello to you too. Synthetic. For some reason, that word didn't connect in my head. Synthetic. Good to see it. Appreciate the question. Guys, if you got questions, if you got thoughts, you disagree with anything I'm saying, as usual, this is a conversation. The more you guys chat, the more you guys ask things in the chat there, it'll just make the show better, in my opinion, and you guys might spot things that I don't, so please call them out. You know, one thing I don't look at tons outside of a few, specific guys is like splits. If you guys got reads on lefty-righty splits, you can throw them into the mix. Sometimes it's more relevant than I give it credit for. What's up, Power? Power's dialed in on MLB DFS this time of year. NB serves you a charcuterie of board of cheddar cheats and gives you the finger sandwiches. Nice. I like it. Yeah, it's a little bit of a more sane NBA slate, I thought, last night. I actually didn't play it, so I don't know what the results ended up looking like basically at all. But I did project it, and it wasn't a crazy, ridiculous slate. Yeah, sale. That was the one I forgot, Travis. I was on the sale upside yesterday, even with the Padres being a good team and avoiding the strikeouts, and he didn't come through. I knew there was something else that I needed to give myself a ding for yesterday. And it was that Chris Sale read. I do like the upside. We'll get there in a little bit, but he graded out well. He's right there. I think that's a perfectly fair price, 93 on both sites. As one of your top-end pitchers of the day, with some Ks available in that lineup, yeah, I like that spot. Cubbies lineup, very interesting team. We talked about it most of last year with their ability to get on base, with their solid mid-grade power, with the addition now of Kyle Tucker to the heart of that lineup. I like this team. I think they're good for DFS. They're never super expensive. That'll change a little bit around Tucker. It looks like Seiya Suzuki cracked 5,000 on DraftKings while staying at 34 on FanDuel today. But there's some quality here. I love Ian Happ. 341 on base last year, a 199 ISO, created runs 22% better than average while hitting 25 homers, stealing 13 bases. I think he's ideal in the leadoff spot ahead of this group of guys. I expect a nice, solid continual production out of Michael Busch. He hit 21 home runs, kind of under discussed last year, 192 ISO, created runs 19% better than average over 567 opportunities, 11+% barrel rate. The hard hit rate was a little bit lighter than you would expect given that contact, but this could go rocketing up if he continues to make contact. And he can draw his walks. Everybody up at the top of the lineup draws walks. Everybody up at the top of the lineup capable of getting on base, keeping the machine moving, sequencing. Definitely an interesting team. Gets a little bit more dicey down toward the bottom. We've seen a little bit of early production out of Miguel Amaya, but we're not expecting much. He had 8 homers last year in 363 plate appearances. We are expecting production, though, from Matt Shaw. We are expecting Pete Crow Armstrong to grow into the hitter that he's supposed to be. He's already one of the best outfielders in the league, but the bat needs to come around. 237, 286, 384, 13% worse than average creating runs last year. 10 homers, fortunately, did steal 27 bases. So if you had him in DFS lineups, maybe you weren't completely burnt. But I really like the upside for him to start to grow as a hitter. And he's going to be in the lineup basically every day. Nico, we'll see what we get. Is at least a decent average on base guy, more correlated scoring piece. I just don't love him in the middle of the lineup. Like if we could get Nico either at the top on a day where Hap's not there, perfectly fine, or from the 9 spot, if I could get Nico 9, maybe Miguel Amaya 8, and we move Matt Shaw into that 6 spot or Pete Crow Armstrong, that's a more productive DFS lineup because then I can wrap Nico around and I can use that cheap middle infield share. Second base on DraftKings for 43, not exactly cheap. 29 on FanDuel, both middle infield spots. I think he's just more effective in that role. 31 steals, a 335 on base. If you're putting that ahead of Ian Happ, Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, it gets interesting from down bottom as a DFS play, as a wrinkle. But from the heart of the order, it's not really what he does. So hopefully we get him dipping in the lineup and these other kids moving up as they continue to grow. They're going up against Merrill Kelly, a decidedly middle-of-the-road type pitcher. 73 on DraftKings is an SP2. He's all right. But I don't love the idea of throwing him into all the on-base for the Cubs. He doesn't walk a ton of hitters, but he also doesn't strike a ton of guys out. He gives up a lot of premium contact, which could turn into a problem. Keeps the ball not ridiculously good at keeping the launch angle down, but this is not problematic. But this is problematic way over the line where we want it. That's over our mark. So is that. Resulted in a 3.67 home run rate last year. And if we see a little bit of an increase in launch, that becomes a problematic home run number. It's also below average in terms of what just the arsenal looks like. This is 73 and 2/3, 13 starts, by the way. Just a 21% strikeout rate. I don't love it. I think he's just a mix and match pitcher on DraftKings. At 84 on FanDuel, you can see where he projects. I just don't need to go down to here against the Cubs to get that. Looks like a rough spot. What was their Cubbies just under a 4 implied total? 8.5 on this game overall, though. I agree with that, Stoll. Stoll Waters jumps in, says the Snakes are underrated this season. I agree. Lost Christian Walker, but replaced him with Josh Naylor. Naylor's going to lose a little bit of his power playing most of the time in this ballpark, but not completely. And he's got ways that he can, I think, fill in around that and be just as good quality-wise. If Eugenio Suarez looks like he did last night and through the last 2 months of last season, that's going to be a major uptick. He finished last year 256, 319, 469, 30 home runs after being dead for the first half of last season. Ketel Marte up at the top of the lineup. If not the best second baseman in baseball, he's the second best second baseman in baseball. Nobody leaps to mind who's better. 36 homers last year, 268 ISO, 151 WRC+. plus. Corbin Carroll, after that terrible start that he had last year. Remember how disappointing he was last season at the beginning of the year as a first-round pick? He crushed fantasy teams, and you probably didn't win if you took him in the first round last year. But look at where he finished. 22 homers, 35 steals, scored 121 runs, had a 197 ISO, created runs overall 7% better than average. At one point, that was like 76. And that point was in like June. Came roaring back to life. So yeah, I like that. Lourdes Gurriel's a good player. Gabriel Moreno could make some strides. Pavin Smith is an interesting bat late in the lineup. So yeah, I think they're underappreciated this year. Their biggest challenge is the division in which they play. That's a brutal division. But I think they are a good baseball team, and the pitching staff is very, very good. In terms of winning this game, Trav, or in terms of DFS options? I think for both things, I would probably say, yeah. I like the Diamondbacks to win this game. I have no idea. Well, I do know what the line looks like. We just talked about it a minute ago. But yeah, for DFS purposes, considering that they're facing Jameson Taillon, which we haven't discussed yet, they have the highest implied total on the entire slate, and all those bats I just ran through. Like the Diamondbacks, a little bit better than the Cubbies, but I definitely think the Cubs are on the board. Merrill Kelly, slightly better probably than Jameson Taillon. Taillon's not bad, but he's not a DFS option. Just an 85 grade by Stuff Plus is weak in terms of what the arsenal truly looks like. But he gets away with it. 3.27 ERA last year, but the real number was this 4.15 xFIP. So you're talking about a 4-run pitcher. You're talking about a guy who allows a ton of contact. Doesn't really issue too many free passes, but just an 18.5% strikeout rate. The contact against is not bad, though. The home run rate was fine. He's a perfectly serviceable back of the rotation in real life type pitcher, but you're not looking at him for DFS, and you can definitely tag Jameson Taillon with a quality lineup like this. So yeah, I like the Snakes. Steven Leibowitz, what's going on, buddy? Better late than never. Yeah, 56 people here, hour and a half into the show. I think this is our 5th game. Yeah, so you're halfway through the show. I should probably push this start time to noon. If you're at rotoscouts and you're sitting there clicking around saying, where the hell are today's basketball and NHL projections? They'll be up. Don't worry about it. Just got to get through this show first. That's going to be the program, though. Those will go up later in the afternoon, and there's really no point in publishing basketball projections before 5 o'clock these days. Steven's going to rewind and double speed it. You might catch us by the end. So, yeah, really like the Cubbies, really like the Diamondbacks in terms of bats, and not really on either pitcher. You can gamble on shares of either guy on DraftKings in your SP2 spot, but there's not a ton of upside coming through. So I think we're just focused on bats. Going into the D-backs just a little bit further, since I kind of breezed through it. Perfectly fair prices to pay for both Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll off the top on both sites. And then essentially everybody else is just cheap. 47 and 31 is fine for Josh Naylor. He hit 31 bombs last year. Johnny Suarez, as mentioned, hit 30. Still only cost $2,900 on FanDuel, $3,400 on DraftKings. 11.3% barrels, 42.4% hard hits. Yeah, he strikes out a lot. 30.8% 2 years ago. Down to 27.5 last year, actually. Nice improvement there, but lost some walks. But the potential to just crush the ball all season long. 214 ISO and started out great. Hit a big home run yesterday. Lourdes Gurriel for only $4,200 is a great buy if you're looking at the Diamondbacks if he's hitting third. 279, 322, 435 last year. Creator runs 8% better than average. Not a big power bat, but just a machine as far as run creation. 18.3% strikeouts, just 5.2% walks. So another guy we're just talking about contact. His premium contact dipped a little bit year over year. If he gets anywhere near these numbers again, that's going to be a great driving force in this lineup. 46% hard hits. He dipped down under 40% last year. That was part of the problem. Year before, he hit 24 home runs, 201 ISO. We could get that guy back very, very easily. Moreno only came away with 5 home runs, but 266, 353, 380 is very high quality from a catcher, especially when he only costs $29 at catcher on DraftKings. That's a high quality fifth man to work into a lineup. I would rather have him than Jake McCarthy in amongst my spread of those guys. Pavin Smith for 28, first base and outfield eligible, so no conflict with Naylor there. 2,500 on the FanDuel slate. In just 158 plate appearances last year, hit 9 home runs, had a 348 on base, a monster 277 ISO, 14.7% barrels. Dude has always made good contact. He's pretty much post-hype at this point. Never really got this full opportunity because of Christian Walker being there and a number of other factors, but should see way more plate appearances this year. Has the opportunity to have a nice little breakout season in a not fully part-time, but not full-time role. He pinch hit yesterday. Geraldo Perdomo is an effective wraparound play. He got on a 344 clip last season. You can absolutely take him, put him at the bottom, and wrap him back around to Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, and your choice of any of these three. So this is a 1 through 9 lineup easily against one of the lower-end pitchers on the entire slate. So, yeah, fire up Diamondbacks. Again, 462 is the highest implied, second highest behind the Red Sox implied total of the day. I'm sure they're going to be popular. I'm not sure they're going to be popular. Mid-teensy? That's popular for baseball, but they'll be less popular than the Red Sox while not being all that differentiated from where the Red Sox are at. Interesting spot. Bats on both sides in this one, though. Big time pitchers park in the equation in this one. Our highest projected pitcher of the day at just 8,300, Luis Castillo on the DraftKings slate. 10-4, fully priced on FanDuel, but worth it. As mentioned, we have seen a little bit of a decline, maybe creeping in around the edges. Went from 27% strikeouts the last 2 seasons down to 24.3. The walks were perfectly fine and in line with previous seasons. The whip went up, but negligibly. 2.99 ERA with a 3.23 xFIP 2 years ago, up to a 3.34 with a 3.81 in 23, and then that crept up to a 3.64 with a 3.82 xFIP last season. While the strikeouts dipped from the 27 range to the 24% range, he lost some swinging strikes from where he was in 23, but this 11.8 is right in line with where he was back in 2022. That is a really low CSW. Wow. It was kind of similar last year. That's interesting. That's where some of it's gone. Lost some swinging strikes and just not a big thrower of cold strikes in general. It's going to have an impact. That's why that CSW is so low. But again, not somebody who walks a ton of hitters. It's just if he's not punching them out, he's going to give up some contact. Stuff Plus grades him out at just 101. He did give up a problematic, well, not quite problematic, but an aggressive home run rate at 3.48. 41.7% of hard hits. That's that contact that I mentioned. Fly ball trajectory pitcher. So it benefits a little bit from his home park for sure, but still very, very strong option and could come roaring back to life. We've seen this guy be a upper 20s strikeout pitcher. He's got a good matchup for K's against this Oakland Athletics team. Multiple guys in the high 20s as far as strikeout rate goes. Multiple question marks as far as what their strikeout rates are going to go to from some of the other guys in this projected lineup. But there is, as mentioned, a lot of power here. We saw Tyler Soderstrom hit 2 bombs yesterday. It was 2, right? He ended up with 2? I know he hit 1. Why did I pull it up over there? Regardless, and I'll tell you in a second. Oh, did we not put this up yet, guys? Fangraph's not on the ball. Yeah, 2 home runs yesterday. There's a lot of upside in a season-long sense from Tyler Soderstrom. One of their top prospects. Former catcher, mostly going to play first base this year, but going to get some opportunities at catcher, so we might get the dual eligibility on DraftKings back. On FanDuel, it doesn't matter either way. He's currently got it, but they should just stop doing that. It's so dumb because there are no catchers. But he might get that back on DraftKings. That'll make him even more interesting. You can see in the small sample last year, 213 plate appearances. He only went 233, 315, 429. He hit 9 home runs, which is okay in that chunk of plate appearances. This is what I'm interested in, as always. 14.6% barrels, 48.9% hard hits. That's already elite contact. 24.9% strikeouts is fine if you're making that kind of contact. 9.4% walk is good. This is a potentially very, very good up-and-coming corner infielder. So, got my eye on him. I think my mom might watch this show later on, so I won't actually say the word that I yelled probably a little too loud at our season-long draft when my buddy Louie took him in the 8th round. And again, this is a heavy contracts and keeper league, so that was not an inappropriate spot to take him. But I had traded up into the 10th thinking he would be there to be my starting first baseman this season and to have him as a prospect. And I was very disappointed, and now I have a platoon of Nathaniel Lowe and Luke Raley. My first base spot is problematic right now because I didn't get Tyler Soderstrom, who was my backup plan. Kind of pissed off about that still, especially after the 2 home run day. But anyway, potentially elite bat, currently hitting in the 6 range. Love that option. He was cheap yesterday. He's pretty cheap today. We didn't get to talk about the A's yesterday because they were on the night slate. I had Soderstrom in my lineup yesterday. Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker off the top. Absolutely love Brent Rooker as a hitter. If you were here several years ago, that sentence sounds completely absurd to you because I used to hate this hitter. And I've talked about it already this season, and I've talked about it all through last year. He made dramatic improvements that I did not think he was going to be capable of making from a couple years ago. He went from being, and if you look at just like surface back of the baseball card numbers, you wouldn't really see it. I mentioned this at our fantasy draft. My buddy Justin pulled him up and was looking at him. He's like, it looks basically the same as he did year over year. And what you have to note is you go down to the plate discipline section if you're looking at Fangraphs and start looking at some of those numbers and what he did in terms of his swing rate, his swinging strike rates, and his whiff rate against essentially every single type of pitch. He used to be a guy who was just an aggressive free swinger with a super high whiff rate. Swung and missed a ton against every single kind of pitch. Last season, he took more swings. He had a more aggressive swing rate and a lower swinging strike rate with a higher contact rate, better premium contact numbers across the board. That's how you end up with Brent Rooker at 293, 365, 562, 39 home runs, a 269 ISO, 164 WRC plus. I did not think he was going to be capable of making that improvement. He went from a guy who had power, but got lucky when he made contact, to a guy who makes like elite level contact. Brent Rooker, every bit worth 3,800, 5,500. He's too cheap on FanDuel at 38. 55 is probably correct. Lawrence Butler, everybody's favorite breakout candidate this year after what he did last year. That's a breakout, but everybody likes him to go even further. 451 plate appearances, 22 homers, 18 steals, a 228 ISO on 130 WRC+. Absolutely fantastic option in the leadoff role. 11% barrels, 47.4% hard hits. This team is downright interesting. The lineup continues with J.J. Bleday, who's just all right, but from the left side of the plate, he did hit 20 home runs, had a 194 ISO last season, created runs 20% better than average. It's not a bad year. The contact isn't great, but he doesn't strike out a ton. He draws his walks. It's a perfectly capable 3-hitter. By the way, everybody understands what a 3-hitter is these days, right? Once upon a time, that was like the matter. You want your best hitter to be your 3-hitter. You got 2 opportunities, comes up there and drive those guys in. Turns out the 3 spot in the lineup is the one that comes up the most often with 2 outs and nobody on base. It's where you want like an okay hitter. It's where you want your J.J. Bleday. It is not where you want your very best hitter. Traditional baseball, wrong about a lot of things. That's why anybody that you're listening to is an announcer who says, oh, this newfangled analytics stuff, just mute it. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't care how long you played the game. If you say something like that, you are wrong. Shea Langoliers, 29 home runs last season, multiple doubled-on games, 12.8% barrels, 44% hard hits. A very strong catcher option for DFS purposes, especially when he's hitting cleanup. 3,800, 2,800. He is downright cheap for the power upside, especially against, again, Luis Castillo, not invulnerable to power. Gave up a fair amount of home runs last year. Miguel Andujar, there's a bat there, 285, 320, 377 last year. Just not much of a power bat, which is kind of what we thought he was. At one point, it was like, all right, he's going to be a mediocre hitter, but there's power there. Now he's more of a hit tool guy, which is kind of interesting. But getting a regular opportunity here at a fair price, I think you can work him into stacks if you're playing this team. But between him and Tyler Soderstrom, it's Soderstrom every time for me. Gio Urshela, not much of a hitter. Totally skippable down toward the bottom of the lineup. The other Max Muncy, interesting. 6.59 in the home run model. Projects out fairly well for just 2,000, 2,100. One of their more highly regarded prospects. His middle initial, as far as I know, not actually A. But that's how I had to do it to make the model work. I mentioned this at the top of the show, but we got way more people here now. If you're at rotoscouts.com and you're downloading the baseball projections and then uploading them into your optimizer of choice, you have to make a very specific effort with this Max Muncy for now, because they're both just named Max Muncy. So when they're on the same slate like we have today, there are going to be 2 Max Muncies on that list. Just go in and make sure you're getting the right projection in the right spot when you do your uploading. I took the A off of this one's name so that you don't get a conflict. I just added it so stats would come through. I added it basically everywhere. And then I'll have to take it away when the sites do whatever they do to distinguish them. But kind of problematic right now. Anyway, this Max Muncy in 233 minor league plate appearances last year, 10 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Going back 545 plate appearances across high A and double A in 2023. Hit 10 home runs, 13 stolen bases, 275, 353, 411 with a 111 WRC+. More of a hit tool, get on base, steal some bags, be a cog in the machine kind of a guy. But did get up in 2022 to 19 home runs with 19 steals in a full minor league season, but that was across 2 levels of lower. A and high A. So as he progressed, we kind of saw the power decline. But I think he's at least interesting at the dead min if he's in the lineup. And then Jacob Wilson, another capable bat, 103 plate appearances, decent triple slash last year. Only an 86 WRC+, no real power output to speak of. But he's moderately playable as a wraparound from the bottom. Between the two, you just go to the cheaper one, I think, though. They're at the same position on FanDuel, different positions on DraftKings. Mariners lineup going up against Jeffrey Springs, who we haven't seen very much of over the last 2 seasons. Let's hit a couple of those questions actually real quick. Shannon Lambert in the chat, longtime viewer. Appreciate you, Shannon. Asking 20 lineups in DK. How many A's stacks? Good lineup against chalky pitcher tonight. Probably I don't think you need to go too crazy with that. I do think it's a good angle into the slate. I don't think they're going to be all that popular. As you mentioned, chalky pitcher. Reputationally, people haven't caught up to the quality in this A's lineup right now. Yeah, they're all owned in the single digits. The 20 lineups is what I'm wrestling with. I think you could carve them out 3 to 5 in that, depending on what you're putting them with. It's not aggressive. It depends. A lot of that is tied up in your risk tolerance, Shannon. If you're completely risk averse and that's your kind of approach to a slate, you could load it up. You could easily go to half your lineups with that if you want to get super heavy on that angle. But you're very specifically in that case then choosing to make a play on that slate in your 20 lineups. So it depends more on your approach, I think, than on like determining an exact ratio from the quality of the team. That comes down to like, how do you like to play? And I don't think it's necessarily a mistake to take positions on a slate like this if you're entering 20 lineups. In a full portfolio of 150 lineups, I would want them 15+% probably as a stack. I would want them in a decent number. I think it's a gettable spot against Castillo. They've got his quality working against them for sure. If he's the full strength Luis Castillo, they've got the ballpark working against him a little bit. But yeah, I like the power upside specifically in Oakland. I like the DFS upside specifically, as we've been talking about. So I would dedicate a few of those. If you want me to put a number on it in your 20, I would say 3 to 5 is probably, aggressive versus the field, but safe at the same time for your full portfolio. G Money the Don sounds like he's from Oakland. Oakland in the house. I don't know if you're here before when I said it, but yeah, screw this organization or whoever the owner is. Not actually the organization, but the current owner. Screw him forever for moving out of Oakland. Just the worst. And then Max Play Z says, this is Matt Pat. This is under my kid's profile. Says, hey, Terry, long time. Good to see you back for good old baseball. You're always the best. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you very much. Glad you found us. Glad you're back. Check out rotoscouts.com. If you're new here, the site is rotoscouts.com. You can get projections, the home run model. You get, by the way, I haven't mentioned that much. In addition to the projection, you get my custom home run mark for every single player. So you'll get my home run picks article as well with my home run pick of the day and my home run pick from every team. But more importantly, you get the actual number that those are based on for every player alongside the projections. So that's included. Full projections for every pitcher and hitter included. The top stacks, breakdown top stacks board, the power index, all that stuff for baseball is included. Basketball for the rest of the season and the playoffs still included. NHL, including all line combinations and power play units, which I really have to start getting to soon, included for under $1 a day on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly plan. Rotoscouts.com. Check it out. I am doing my best to give you the absolute utmost value I can and keep as much money in your pocket to build your bankroll with. I think it's the right way to do things. There's no reason everybody should be paying $300-$400 a month for 2-3 sports. Anyway, Jeffrey Springs. We haven't seen a lot of them. 7 starts last year, 33 innings, had a 26.1% strikeout rate in that sample. Is a pretty talented pitcher. Year before, in 2023, we only saw 3 starts, 16 innings. Was even better than that. That's Jake DeGrom for those 16 innings. 135 and a third in 25 starts back in 2022. That is his most significant sample as a starter. This was with the Rays. 25 starts, 26.2% strikeout rate, a 2.46 ERA, a 3.29 xFIP, 5.6% walk rate, excellent whip, dominant swinging strike rate, nearly a 30% CSW, was great at limiting premium contact, 5.9% barrels, resulting in only 2.5% home runs. Those are great numbers. Talented guy. It's a gettable spot against this free-swinging Mariners club. What do the spring numbers look like? Maxed out at 4 1/3 in the spring, but his last 3 starts, we saw him face 20 hitters, 18 hitters, and 18 hitters. In his last start of the spring, he faced the Brewers spring lineup. 4 innings, faced 18 hitters, gave up 1 earned on a solo homer, and struck out 8. There's reason to believe in the upside here for Jeffrey Springs. 8,800 on FanDuel, I'm not in love with on the single starter site. But as an SP2, 7,500. That's kind of reasonable. What's his ownership? Ooh, he's popular, huh? Wow. That's interesting. I was hoping that was going to be sneaky. It looks like, and they're I won't name names, but the ownership projection quality comes and goes at the site I'm looking at. They've got him as pretty popular. Not sure where he's grading out at other sites. It makes sense as long as we assume that the public is sharp or other people are talking about it. So I guess he's going to get a little popular as an SP2 on DK. That's where I like him. I do think there's a lot of strikeout upside here. 25.7% average strikeout rate for this projected version of the Mariners lineup is aggressive. That's a lot of Ks. Multiple guys in the upper 20s, a couple guys in the 30% range. One of them small sample with Ryan Bliss down here. But a lot of realistic samples from guys that we know are free swingers. There is power in this lineup, though. Julio Rodriguez should have a nice bounce-back season. That swing is too good. He is too talented to continue at just 20 home runs. He's going to get aggressively better. 24 stolen bases, did create runs 16% better than average, but the ISO was down at 136 last year. He is just a better hitter than that. He's going to come roaring back to life. He's expensive and justifiably so. He's priced where he should be. Victor Robles, pretty cheap on DK at $3,900, really cheap on FanDuel at $27. That's a really interesting option. In his partial season at the end of the year with the Mariners last year, 295 plate appearances, not entirely the end of the season. 307, 381, 433, 141 WRC plus, and stole 34 bases. I mentioned it last year while he was doing that, and you have to give him the credit for once upon a time. And this is like the best example if this actually continues. This will be our best ongoing example of a post hype prospect guy. Victor Robles was once a top 5 prospect in all of baseball coming up with the Nats. And he had a very, very good first season. 2019. If you were here all last year, you heard me ranting and raving about this. 2019, 617 plate appearances with the Nats in his rookie season, 17 home runs, 28 stolen bases, 255, 326, 419. Was only in a 92 WRC plus if you want to ding something, but as a rookie on that team, that is a high quality season. In 2020, the entire league only played 60 games. He played 52 of them. He made 189 plate appearances, hit 3 home runs, stole 4 bags, but dipped badly to 220, 293, 315. Let's remember what was going on in the world while that was happening. And then he never got his full-time job back. He made plate appearances in 21 and 22 for the Nats, 369 and 407 plate appearances, and was bad. Was legit bad. But those were also weird years. We're talking about a 25-year-old. He came up that 2019 season, he was only 22. He's currently only 27, about to turn 28 in 2 months. So he got a decent number of major league plate appearances and did very little with them through that stretch. But if you're going to forgive any 3 years in somebody's baseball history, it's 2020 through 2022. And then he came roaring back last year when he got a new gig out in Seattle, caught on maybe a last gasp opportunity and absolutely took advantage of it. I love the ongoing upside from this player. I think this is potentially very legit. It might not be a 381 on base. Let's not go nuts. But 330s, 340, something like that with a ton of stolen bases, a very productive bat at the top of the lineup ahead of Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, and all their power. Really interesting hitter, especially at 2,700 today. Raleigh, tons of power, 9.17 on the home run model. He hit 34 bombs last year, 216 ISO, 117 WRC+, 15.4% barrels, masher of baseballs, a 3 true outcomes type hitter. 11.1% walks against 28% strikeouts last year with that power. Doesn't do much else in terms of the average or anything, but all he's paid to do is hit home runs. Dynamite catcher option at 43 on DraftKings where that matters. Playable as a first baseman on FanDuel at 32 because they don't have a true first baseman on this squad right now. Randy Arozarena, interesting late season pickup for this team. Bad year last year, but still did go 20-20 in terms of counting stats. Still did create runs 14% better than average, despite going 219, 332, 388, and the saving grace there is obviously the 332 on base. But let's remember how good Randy Arozarena truly is. The guy who fills categories. 254, 364, 425 year before last. 23 homers, 22 steals. That's a much better season in terms of the average. It just looks better on the front end. The power output and the stolen bases were a little bit better, but not dramatically so. Stolen bases went up by 10 the year before that, but it was just a little bit better across the board. Had a higher ISO 2 years back. It's continued to decline a little bit. So maybe we're just dealing with this guy now. But this is still a very productive player who probably took a reputational ding that was not entirely warranted last year based on the amount that he gets on base and creates runs and has those counting stats. So at least for DFS, keep going. 4,500, 3,000, it's a good price. Mitch Garver at 25-26, second catcher in this lineup. Did hit 15 homers last year, but really struggled with everything else. Just a 169 ISO, 12% worse than average for run creation. The contact went away. That was the biggest problem. 12.6% barrels, 41.4% hard hits. Dipped down to 8.4% barrels, most notably. Bottom of this lineup, if you got no Luke Raley in there against the lefty, that might not be the case, by the way. And I actually didn't notice that when I grabbed the Labs lineup. I might update that. I think Luke Raley is going to be in this lineup because all they've done all spring is talk about how they're going to give him plate appearances against lefties and splits be damned this year. So we might not see him, but he would be an upgrade here. Right here. That's weird. Why did that not come through? Oh, because he's not in the lineup. I can't do it that way. I forgot. But real quick, just to talk about him. 22 home runs last year, 11 stolen bases. Good driver of the baseball. Not a good average, but a decent on-base guy. 220 ISO and created runs, 29% better than average. The premium contact is there. Those are the reasons that this team wants to give him more plate appearances. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in there even against a fairly high-quality lefty. If it's Donovan Solano, that's just kind of a mix-and-match guy. He does fill 3 spots on FanDuel. You also get 3 spots out of Dylan Moore. Neither one of those guys is all that appealing. Between the two, though, I prefer Solano because he's at least got a hit tool. 286, 343, 417 last year. Created runs 18% better than average. Just doesn't do a lot of individual run creation, so needs some help from his friends. Ryan Bliss, J.P. Crawford down the bottom of the lineup, kind of skippable. Crawford could give you a little something. Took a bad dip last year, though. A's lineup is interesting. Mariners lineup is interesting. Both pitchers are interesting. This is a high quality game here. 2 to go. Long show today. Appreciate you guys. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Talking about the Vegas stadium. Yeah, it's going to be a couple years in Sacto, though, no? I think it, yeah, oh, there you go. Steven pointed it out, 2028. Appreciate you, Andy. Thank you, buddy. Great crowd, as usual. Back at you guys. Somebody asked way earlier about Dylan Cease. 9,300 on both sites. Looks like a pretty strong price to me. Grades out as one of the better pitchers of the day. One of the stronger strikeout rates of the day. 29.4% last year. Multiple seasons in that range. 189 and a third innings. 33 games last season. What I love most about Dylan Cease, look at that stuff plus number. Just the electric nature of the arsenal. You're talking about probably the best stuff on the board today. You're talking about probably the best strikeout option on the board today. Pretty stretched out. 5 2/3 in his last spring start. 19 hitters, struck out 9 of them. Gave up 2 hits, no runs. In the start before that, 4 1/3. Faced 19 hitters in that one as well. Gave up 3 hits, no runs. Walked 3 in that one. That's why he got up to 19 hitters in fewer innings. Struck out 8 in that one. So we're dealing with Dylan Cease, maybe not 100%, but seems like 90% of Dylan Cease here. It is a talented Braves lineup, but there are definitely strikeouts available for him, and it's strikeouts through their key hitters. Austin Riley, 25% strikeouts last year. Matt Olson, 24.6. Marcell Ozuna, 24.6. Those are their 3 most important bats. Ozzie Albies is great at limiting strikeouts, and we saw the power come through. He hit a homer yesterday. Love the upside for Albies to come bouncing back. But this is a very playable spot for Dylan Cease. It might not work out, but that's the nature of this, right? That's why they play the games, as they say. I really like the spot for Cease. I think we can get aggressive about it. He's going to probably be pretty popular here as just, the ace name of the day. Let's see. Yep, he's pushing a decent amount of popularity on DK, which makes sense. And I'm sure he's pulling as the FanDuel solo starter. Let's see. not as highly owned on FanDuel as I might have expected. He's third highest. We're getting a very, very big number on Yamamoto, interestingly. And I don't want to give away too much because these aren't my numbers. But he's the highest owned and almost doubling up every other pitcher on the slate in these ownership projections. He's the second, third most expensive pitcher on the FanDuel slate. I do like the option. He projects out well in my model as well. I've got him pretty similarly, I think. We'll see him in the next game. What I think is interesting about him, second start of the year for him, while everybody else is making their first, he pitched in the Tokyo series. So potentially a slight bit more stretched out, a lot of talent. But I think that Detroit lineup is going to be good. If I can get him at like half the ownership, I am really interested in Dylan Cease here on FanDuel. It's not going to be the same ownership situation. And again, going by these numbers, I don't want to hang my hat on this. I think he remains extremely interesting on DraftKings, but you don't have quite as strong an ownership advantage. Him and that other guy are like right next to each other at the top of the board, where there's a much bigger gap between the two on FanDuel. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong guy. There is that gap. My eyes jumped when I resorted the column. So, yeah, you've got an appreciable ownership gap on Dylan Cease on both sites. That is really interesting to me. It's a fair price. Again, tons of strikeout upside. Dangerous lineup. Not safe, but that makes him a really strong tournament play. I like that a lot. Not you. Lex over there beeping. Ronaldo Lopez on the other side of this game, too. Not a bad option in and of himself, but he's facing that low strikeout Padres team that kind of dinged our Chris Sale play yesterday. Ronaldo not Chris Sale by any stretch of the imagination. He's good at limiting home runs, 1.85% home runs despite allowing 42.3% hard hits. Fair amount of barrels last year on the fly ball trajectory. Struck out 27%, had a nice year, 2.0 ERA, but a 3.46 xFIP I think is more the real number. And I think people could be surprised by Ronaldo popping back up to a 4-something ERA this year. Anybody who's focusing on this number is looking at the wrong thing. But the 12.2% swinging strikes are nice. He did not allow many opportunities at just a 111 whip. Had a good year in relief the year before. Okay year in relief the year before that. But I wouldn't be totally stunned if this kind of turned not fully back into a pumpkin, but some kind of gourd type object. He's playable here, but it doesn't look great. Much more playable as a upper end SP2 at 78 on DraftKings, I think, than 92 on FanDuel. Braves lineup, Mr. Profar up at the top, 4,100, 3,000. How do you get his season started? One for 5 yesterday. Oh, by the way, if you missed it, the individual with the worst start in Major League Baseball yesterday, Jackson Chourio, 0 for 5 with 5 Ks. Woo! Steven says, Terry doing a long baseball show? Is this new? Yeah, that's the problem when I start it in the middle of the afternoon. I know that I've got time to just like luxuriate. But yeah, I gotta wrap this up soon because I do have to still do all the basketball and NHL projections, and NHL can get long. They're medium-sized slates today though, so we're fine. So Profar fairly priced, 4,100, 3,000. It could be qualified as a pretty good buy there actually at those prices. 24 home runs, 10 steals last year, 179 ISO is just okay, but the production was very real last year. You can't take it away from him, but I'm very curious to see if it actually comes back. You can't take last year away, but you might not be able to he might not have it in his bag this year. So very much a still work in progress in my opinion. Austin Riley, 49-33 across sites, hit only 19 home runs last year after multiple seasons in a row of 30-plus home runs. Hit one yesterday. I love him to go back over 30. One of my favorite bounce-back plays of the entire league. 205 ISO still, despite the downturn in overall home run power was good. One of the key indicators. And more to the point, the 14.9% barrels, the 53.4% hard hits, despite the dip in home run total. Love the upside there. And by the way, that also came in only 469 plate appearances, so you just got to erase some for the lack of opportunity. Matty Olson had a more problematic season year over year than Riley in terms of the dip in quality. Went way down from, and that is still just in a vacuum a good season, 29 home runs, 213 ISO. But that's down from 54 home runs and a 321 ISO. That's a big downturn in power while remaining a very high quality season. You can see a little bit of loss of hard hit, a little bit of loss of barrel. Talented enough guy that could come roaring back and probably should be expected to at least end up in the mid-30s home run-wise. If he sees that many plate appearances, you should absolutely expect 35-plus home runs from Matt Olson this year. Marcell Ozuna carried this team all season long, 304, 381, 552, was tremendous all season last year. Should come right back. Very talented hitter. This lineup will get a big shot in the arm when Ronald Acuna comes back in a month or so. But for right now, Ozuna should be expected to continue just kind of carrying this lineup. And he's been great at it. 39 homers last season. 4,800, 3,700, probably not expensive enough on either site. Probably should be more expensive on DraftKings than Matt Olson. It's not ridiculous to have it this way, but I probably would have given it to Ozuna and put maybe Olson at like 49. On FanDuel, he is the most expensive option, but you could easily have gone to 4. You could easily have gone to 39. So it feels a little bit light. Ozzy Albies is definitely cheap on DK. 4,400. Again, hit a home run yesterday. This is a very talented, one of the most talented second basemen in baseball. 33 homers, 280, 336, 513 with a 233 ISO year before last. Took a big dip. Was unavailable a lot last year due to injury. Only 426 plate appearances was part of it. Wasn't fully healthy when he was back. Love Ozzy Albies to come roaring back along with this entire Braves lineup this season. Michael Harris underperformed his talent last year. 461 plate appearances, also an incomplete season. 16 homers, 10 steals, just a 157 ISO, just at 100 WRC+. I like the upside for him. And again, there's things to point to for all these guys. The barrels, the hard hits were just right in line with where they've been. There's production there. I like Michael Harris as a player if he gets a full season of plate appearances. Drake Baldwin, rookie filling in for Sean Murphy. Upside in that bat for a cheap catcher. If you're going to Braves, you can build him into stacks, but he's not a priority. He's not like a key one-off piece necessarily. Orlando Arcia had a rough year last year, but still came away with 17 homers, which is the only thing you can hang your hat on there. He's very cheap. You can play him in stacks, but not a priority. Jared Kelenic, assuming he's in the lineup, I definitely think you can play, and I think is interesting. I talked about him yesterday. The contact was still there, 9.9%, 45%, rivals the season before. Not that he's had his breakout moment yet. I'm not willing to write this player off yet. I told some of you who were here for the previous shows that I went out and acquired him in the offseason in the Dynasty League and then got boxed out for a second time in 3 years on a prospect by Jurickson Profar. But I think the talent is there. I really do. I think the development was screwy. I think you probably came to the show too soon and got overexposed. I think we do see the breakout from Kelenic, but it's probably going to come on a bad team. Like he'll go to the Pirates and see 600 plate appearances and come roaring to life. Something like that is what we need for Kelenic. But anytime he's in the lineup at these cheap prices, you can find upside there. On the Padres side, Luis Arias is at the top of the lineup. Very solid slap hitter. Very good table setter. But the definition of a guy who needs help from his friends DFS-wise. So you need multiple things to come through. You need him to have his 3 for 5 day, 4 for 5 day. And then you need him to get driven in multiple times because those are going to be singles. Those are not high-scoring batted ball events. 41-28, I think, is fair. I greatly prefer him at second base. I do not like occupying first base with Luis Arias. Fernando Tatis Jr., potentially monster season incoming. Big dip, 21 home runs, 11 stolen bases last year, but still maintained a 216 ISO. Creator runs 35% better than average. Made elite level contact. Starting to talk about being fully healthy this year, how he's going to be running again this year. You could get monster performances, appropriately priced at $54,000. Jackson Merrill, 52 on DraftKings is right. 36 on FanDuel, maybe $300 too cheap. 292, 326, 500 as a rookie last year. 24 homers, 16 steals. If you're going to the pods, fire up the Jackson Merrill shares. Both these lineups kind of impacted by the ballpark here, by the way. Not an exactly ideal hitting environment, but two high-quality lineups. You can play either of these teams against either of these pitchers, but I think I lean slightly pitching, and it's Dylan Cease all day. Cronenworth, not my favorite, but he's playable at those prices. He's cheap for a guy with 17 home runs. gets on base effectively, positive run creator. Xander Bogaerts had a bad year last year, down to 11 home runs and 13 steals, just a 95 WRC plus. Love him as a candidate to come back to life. He stole a base yesterday. Not sure what else he did, but I know he stole a base. Best shape of his life, buzz all around him because he moved back to shortstop and dropped like 10 pounds in the offseason, so on and so forth. Gavin Sheets, Jason Hayward, Elias Diaz at the bottom of the lineup. Playable, but also entirely skippable. And then the last game of the day. Long show, as Steven mentioned. Appreciate the 50 plus people still here hanging out. You guys absolutely rock. One last time, hit the thumbs up down there. Does actually help. If you haven't done it before, subscribe to the channel for your benefit so that you know when these things go live, so that you see the notifications or whatever that come through. Also for my benefit, does actually help. Really trying to get it over 1,000 subscribers. So spread the word, tell your friends, tell people that we're back in business for baseball. Jack Flaherty, 8,500, 9,000. Doesn't really project well. That's despite striking out 29.9% in another strong season across 28 starts last year. 3.17 ERA, 3.0 xFIP. Went from the Tigers to the Dodgers last season in a trade, won the World Series, came back from the Dodgers to the Tigers in free agency this year. Dodgers didn't want him back at the salary he wanted. They went other directions and brought in one of the potentially elite young pitchers in the entire planet. But it wasn't a bad year from Flaherty. What's most notable about those numbers, two things really. The 3.70 home run rate is a little bit approaching problematic territory. And the 94 rating by Stuff Plus. Not a darling of the Stuff Plus community. There's a lot of negative buzz around Jack Flaherty this year. There was a lot of negative buzz around Jack Flaherty going into season-long drafts this year. Didn't have a bad spring. 6 innings against Atlanta in his most recent spring start. Faced 21 hitters, 3 hits, struck out 5. 4 innings, 21 hitters against the Orioles spring lineup. Bad start in terms of runs, gave up 6, but we don't really care about that. We don't really care about any individual game, but what I care about is that he faced hitters. He struck out 6. He was effective in terms of that, and you don't care about spring home runs allowed. So I think we're, maybe a little light on Flaherty, and I think it's mostly to do with the back-end projections. Right? The season-long stuff. And I get in here and I tweak these numbers, and actually the hitting numbers this year, it says Steamer there, and I've always used Steamer traditionally for this, and then gone in and kind of played some jazz on it. This year I actually took Steamer, and if you're not familiar, Oopsie is a new projection system. And I really like what they're doing and the reason I baked it in and averaged them this year is Oopsie projects based on a lot of the things that I talk about on these shows and a lot of things that I care about. Some of the advanced StatCast stuff, a lot of the barrel of the hard hits, the contact-based stuff, and the swing stuff. So I'm really interested in working their projections in. So I did that with the hitting this year. They also project pitching, but I found it less relevant there. So I did not do that with pitching. But I think I might go in and just kind of look at where Jack Flaherty's at, because I feel like we're a little light. But I also don't want to just fly in the face of the entire industry if everybody's saying, and for good reason in some cases, Eno Saris with his Stuff Plus mark doesn't like him. These guys are smarter than I am, so I don't necessarily want to fly in their face. But I feel like on any individual game, you could get a much better start than he might be projected for here. But it is the Dodgers on the other side of this, so I probably could have cut, if you're looking to trim fat from this show, probably could have cut that entire thing. Flaherty's playable, but not exactly ideal at 85, 9,000 against the Dodgers, especially not when he projects poorly. Yoshi Yamamoto, though, on the other side, the most highly owned pitcher of the day, apparently, on both sites. I didn't have that on my dance card. I figured he'd be popular, but I didn't think he'd be offset popular. But it looks like he is in those projections. He was good, not great in his first season. 90 innings over 18 starts. 28.5% strikeout rate is very good against the 6% walk rate, even better. 3.0 ERA, 2.86 xFIP. All that's dynamite. Swinging strike rate was 12%. Just a 100 rating by Stuff Plus was a little surprising. 41.3% hard hits allowed, but a lot of ground balls. I think there's a ton of talent there. I don't want to take anything away from him when I say that, but I don't know that necessarily, it's unfair what I'm saying, right? This is a very strong 90 innings. I think there are things that I can nitpick in there, like I was just getting at. He projects out great, but he's going up against the Tigers team that is improving and is on the rise. Spencer Torkelson had a great day yesterday. He hit a homer. He drew 3 walks. If that plate discipline comes around and the contact comes back to where it was in 2023, Spencer Torkelson could come roaring back to life. 219, 295, 374 last year with just 10 home runs in his 381 plate appearances. In 2023, over 684, he hit 31 home runs, had a 213 ISO, 107 WRC+, plus, former first overall pick. Love what he did in his first game of the season, coming back at 3,500, 2,500 across sites. Very cheap, interesting bat if you're considering Tigers against the most popular pitcher of the day. I think there's good reason to consider the Tigers. Would not shock me if they got to Yoshi here a little bit. I don't love Zach McKinstry at the top of the lineup if that's what we get. 277 on base last year. That's not a leadoff hitter. Let's hope they do something different in that spot. He's entirely skippable. He's just cheap. If he's leading off, you can bolt him onto the top of a stack if you want to. But the hitters that you want are Torkelson, who I just talked about, Riley Green at only 4,700, 3,300. Potential breakout season coming for him too. 217 ISO last year, 24 home runs, arguably a breakout season already. Created runs 35% better than average, got on at a 348 clip. Riley Green is flat out good already and could get better in a hurry. 13.4% barrels, 46.2% hard hits last year. Improvement on the season before. Very interesting hitter. They added Gleyber Torres to this group. Let's not forget that Gleyber is good. You will, I think, universally, you, we, us, I think people are going to come around on Gleyber now that he's just away from the New York media. His season last year was okay. 257, 330, 378. Only a 121 ISO, hit 15 home runs, several of them Yankee Stadium home runs. Created runs 4% better than average. What I hated about last year was that he went up to a still strong 20.5% strikeout rate. But the year before looked like he had really finally truly clicked. He had cut strikeouts down to 14.6%. He had pushed walks up to 10%. He had a really strong season. He hit 25 home runs, stole 13 bags for the Yankees that year, 180 ISO. I thought we were finally on our way. I thought he was going to get extended and still be the Yankees' second baseman. None of that came true. Now he's on the Tigers. I like Gleyber's upside. I really do. And 330 on base is not nothing if you're just going to focus on that. But he does need to get back to this kind of quality of contact. This isn't elite, but it's better than what he did last year. And that's where some of the power went. If he can improve on the strikeouts, so much the better. Kerry Carpenter is excellent lefty bat. In 296 plate appearances, he went 284, 345, 587 with a 303 ISO. 18 home runs. Those are elite numbers. 16.9% barrels, 45.1% hard hits. Fantastic contact. Kerry Carpenter is just good. 4,400 is too cheap. 3,300 is also too cheap, but not quite as aggressively cheap. He had 20 home runs in 459 plate appearances the year before, if you're not a believer in those shorter sample numbers from last year. 194 ISO. In a cup of coffee the year before that in 113 plate appearances. 6 home runs, 233 ISO. Just missed time last year. This is a 30 home run guy in a full season. Colt Keith didn't exactly distinguish himself last year, but the season was okay. 260, 309 is weak. The 260's fine. The 309 is weak. The 13 home runs are okay. 7 stolen bases, a 120 ISO. If he's going to be playing first base, we need more production than that. But this is a kid with a lot of prospect pedigree. So I expect a better year from Colt Keith. I expect growth from Colt Keith. Trey Sweeney, interesting bat down further down in the 7 spot there. Lefty shortstop. 2,400 on FanDuel, 2,700 on DraftKings. Only 4 home runs in 119 plate appearances last season, but quality bat on ball, 44.3% hard hits. There's room to grow. Jake Rogers, Manny Margot are disposable parts. Rogers does have a lot of power if he happens to connect. He doesn't connect all that frequently. On the Dodgers side, going up against Jack Flash, again, Flaherty, playable on his own. I do think there's something there still. But facing the Dodgers is going to make it kind of a no, especially at these prices. If you happen to get him cheap, weirdly here, it would have been a different conversation. So we're looking at Dodgers bats against, but probably not crazy aggressively because they're very expensive. They might end up lower owned than the spot would suggest in a vacuum if you took price out of it, because they project as the number 3 overall team in aggregate projections, but they're like 12th in value in my numbers. So they dip because 6,300, 5,200, 5,000, 5,100 off the top. On FanDuel, that's 45, 42, 37, 36. You're paying a pretty penny for these guys. So you do have to start stretching down to some of the other options in the lineup. Fortunately, one of those is a 5-hitting, too low priced, but somebody's got to be a little bit cheap, Max Muncy, the real Max Muncy, original recipe of Max Muncy. 15 homers last year and 293 plate appearances. Quality contact. 3 true outcomes hitter. Aggressive swinger, but draws his walks. 15.4% walk rate last year, 14.7 the year before. 358 on base. It's a tremendous option. For those prices at $4,500 on DraftKings, that is a bargain. You can go one off that Max Muncy play at first or third for that price. Perfectly viable plan. But I think taking any one of those first 4 hitters and replacing him with Max Muncy is at least a way to get started on making this Dodgers stack a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. Same story with him on FanDuel, but he's only offset a little bit. It's like if you're just saying, screw salary, and you're paying up for a Dodgers stack on FanDuel, swapping him isn't necessarily a must. It's very doable. You're not losing anything, and you're getting a very good option for 200 less at a different position. So go for it to your heart's content. But it's not as strong a price advantage. Will Smith at $4,000, where you need catchers. That is a great option. That's way too cheap for this quality of a hitter. Hit 20 home runs last year. Took a little bit of a dip on the front side, but the 327 on base is fine. The 185 ISO is fine. Year before, 177 ISO with 19 homers. Year before that, 24 homers with a 205 ISO. This is a catcher with a lot of power. He's in the lineup essentially every day. 500 plus plate appearances from a catcher is always what you're looking for. 10+% barrels. That is a highly playable catcher where you need him, and another way to help make this lineup cheaper. So if you're starting from here and looking at those 2 guys and then adding on to that, let's just say, for argument's sake, let's make this as cheap as possible while getting as much quality. Got too close to the microphone there. Cheap as possible while taking as much quality. That means we're just leaving Ohtani off the top. But now I'm getting a stack with Mookie, Freeman, Teoscar, Max Muncy, and Will Smith as a 5-man on DraftKings for an average salary of $4,700 apiece. Can I interest you in that? I think I can. So I think that's the way to approach it on DK. And then, of course, you've got Michael Conforto there to help average that even further down. You've got Tommy Edman, who's got a rip-roaring start to his season. You can help average that down while getting him at second base. You can get even more aggressive and play Andy Pajas there. Andy Pajas hit 13 home runs last year. Came out of the gate strong and then kind of trailed off. 10.7% barrels for the season, though. A lot of power upside. You can make this Dodger stack cheaper than it looks like. So there are angles in there. If they come up low owned in whatever ownership you end up looking at, or even if you don't, if they end up lower owned than their talent would suggest, and then the negative vibes around Jack Flaherty might suggest, it becomes interesting because there are ways to maintain a fairly high level of quality while making him cheap. Of course, we all want Ohtani in our lineup, but if that's the sacrifice you have to make while still getting 5 excellent players from this Dodgers lineup that has monster upside on any given slate, that has the 3rd highest implied total of the day, I think that makes sense. I think it's something at least worth exploring. I think the Tigers bats, again, cheap and potentially underrated. Yamamoto, though, against them, very highly playable. One of the top projected pitchers of the day. And then the Dodgers lineup, looking pretty solid, despite being high-priced on the surface. So at least 3 out of the 4 corners of this game are in play, and then you could draw shares of Jack Flaherty, but I'm not going to be doing it. I think it would be overly aggressive against this Dodgers team. Last quick look at the pitching board. That's the pitching board. It's 3:30. I got to get out of here. Love the Castillo option. I hate the FanDuel price. I love the DraftKings price. But I do like that Oakland lineup. We are going to be playing A's against. Yoshi Yamamoto, I think it's probably the same thing. I think I will have a few Tigers against, especially with as cheap as they are. There's value there. But I will have some Yamamoto against them. I think Dylan Cease might end up being my most exposed player of the day, pitcher of the day, given the offset compared to the other guys at the top of the board in terms of public ownership. Probably the roughest matchup when you consider the Tigers, the Athletics, and the Braves. But the Braves, that squad struggled all last year, and there are plenty of Ks for him to go find, and he's basically stretched out. Probably one of the more stretched out guys not named Yamamoto on this slate. Gausman, I'm concerned about. 86-81. He projects out okay, but that Baltimore lineup is very, very good. and he was shaky at best last year and took a big dip in Ks. Also concerned about Ronaldo. I don't love him in this spot, but he's a lot more playable on DK at the 78. Hunter Brown, I like a lot, 94.88. Happy to pay it on both sides, even against the Mets. Springs is interesting, but going to get popular, especially at 75 on DK, but there's a lot of strikeout upside there for him going up against Seattle. Get him while he's healthy. Mitch Keller, too expensive on FanDuel, appropriate as an SP2 on with upside on DraftKings. You can play him on FanDuel at that price, but there are options that are cheaper that I like better, namely everybody up here. Tyler McGill, if it wasn't against the Astros, we would be going aggressively to this spot. I think you can go aggressively to this spot as an SP2 for only $6,000 on DraftKings. But just bear in mind that Astros lineup is utterly elite at avoiding the strikeout, and Tyler McGill needs those strikeouts to really provide DFS upside. It's probably just not the day. My hope is they destroy him today and we get him super cheap against a weaker team next time. Tanner Houck, mix and match. Going to keep the ball on the ground, though. Texas going to have a problem hitting home runs against him. I prefer the Texas side of that equation. I probably prefer the Toronto side of this equation, but Charlie Morton is cheap enough to be playable against Toronto. I just question what the innings are going to look like with Charlie. Jack Flaherty, again, a lot of negative vibes going on. I think that DK price is moderately playable, but the matchup is brutal. I think we just skip it. Merrill Kelly, I don't love. I like that Cubs lineup a lot better. Jack Leiter's a wild card on this slate. 7,300, 6,500 could easily pay off that DK price. But the Red Sox, chalk of the day, highest implied total of the day, tons of power showing, and Leiter hasn't proven it yet at the major league level. Even in the minors, against all the strikeouts, tons and tons of walks. Problematic. So it could be a big day for Boston. We're all over the Boston Bats. Tristan Casas, home run pick of the day. Jameson Taillon, Connor Gillespie, I think are entirely skippable at the bottom of the board. That is your 2.5-hour show. You guys absolutely rock out there. Tizzleman says, thanks, Terrace. Snagged first a dime contest in MLB yesterday. Ready to get another one today. Love it, man. Congrats. It's awesome. Got to get this win. Sorry, I didn't, it's oopsie like that. It's on Fangraphs. I believe it is an acronym, but I forget what it stands for. I'll link the article that introduced us. Yep. That's the article on Graphs, though, that explains what oopsie is. Let's see what the acronym stands for. If it is. Do they not explain it? Maybe it's not an acronym. For pitchers, it accounts for stuff plus, by the way. But the reason I don't necessarily love that is the wild swings that you can get in stuff plus, not only year over year, but game over game. I am in love with stuff plus as a measurement or as a discussion point and indicator. And excuse me again, Eno was actually on MLB Central this morning talking about it and how it is effective in small samples. And that's why he designed it. So he broke it down to like even on 10, 15 pitches, I can use stuff plus to make some conclusions. But I don't know that it's great in a long-term pitching projection. So that's why I didn't bake it in, because of those year-over-year, game-over-game potential changes pretty dramatically. Might be something worth baking in later on. But it doesn't look like they put in the explanation of what oopsie actually stands for, if it stands for anything. Yeah, Marcel is another one of the ones that was more obscure. Cub says, is that the word you don't want to repeat because your mom is watching? No, that was a profanity with which you guys are very familiar, I'm sure. Yeah, that was when, if you missed that part of the show, that was when Tyler Soderstrom got picked. My backup first baseman got poached and then hit 2 home runs in his first game last night. That is your show, gang. Let me punch out of here. I got to go do a couple hours worth of NBA projecting and NHL projecting. That'll be up on the site shortly, or not quite shortly, but in an hour or so. If you're looking for basketball and hockey, it'll be up on the website. For under $1 a day, you can get access to basketball main slates, hockey main slates, and every baseball main slate through the entire season. I'm going to be doing some season-long baseball content. That's included NFL when it comes back, and anything else I think of in the meantime. If we start doing esports, that'll be included for under $1 a day. Weekly, monthly, quarterly plans available at rotoscouts.com. Check it out, guys. Like and subscribe on the channel if you get a chance. I really appreciate all you guys. No show tomorrow. I'll be going to the Yankee game tomorrow. Projections will be up on the site as usual, though. I'll make any notes if I don't have a lineup by the time I need to leave. And I'm thinking it's probably going to be a night slate tomorrow. And the Yanks are at 1, so we should have plenty of time. But not going to be any issues with projections, but no weekend shows as usual. So back on Monday, live, we'll break down the entire Monday thing. And who the hell knows, if I'm bored on Sunday, I might jump on. You guys rock. I will see you as soon as possible. Somebody go, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share a screenshot when you do. And we'll see you soon. Later.